Husband catches wife cheating after years of betrayal, confronts her, and delivers his final revenge. "I'm really sorry, Mr. Walker. I hate delivering bad news," John Michael said, handing me an envelope with a report on my wife's dealings with her ex-boss, Grant Jacobs, along with photos and a DVD. Though I glanced at the photos, I hadn't yet watched the DVD. Part of me resisted, but I knew I had to confront it. "Do you know how long this has been happening?" I asked. John checked his notes before answering. "Based on what we found, it's been ongoing for at least 10, maybe 12 years. It started around when your wife was up for a promotion," John said. "Aligning with the birth of our daughter Sophie, I decided to get DNA tests. Another worry struck me, STDs. The report showed Grant had affairs with other married women. Although we'd been carnal since her retirement, what risks had I faced unknowingly? I needed testing." Scanning the report again, I grimaced at Aaron's note that Linda seemed unaware of Grant's affairs. "If it helps, Grant claimed he never meant to break up your marriage. He just wanted physical, engaging," John said, "and they never did anything at your home. I'd let JN install cameras, hoping our marital space hadn't been violated." "No, that's not comforting, Mr. Michaels," I said. "Grant Jacobs was no favorite of mine. Now I understood why." "There's more, Mr. Walker," John continued. "Jacobs' sister Natalie knew about the affair and might have helped." This saddened me. I'd always thought Natalie was decent. "Damn," I muttered. "Have you talked to a lawyer?" JN asked. "Not yet. I wanted to know the truth first," I admitted. "Well, Lisa Hawkins is my go-to for these situations. She's top-notch and hates cheaters. I can send this over to her and let her know you'll be contacting her," John offered. "That would be helpful, thanks." "I'll call her office for an appointment," I said, taking his business card. "Can I offer a suggestion?" John asked. "Of course," I replied. "Let Lisa handle this. I know it's tough, but don't risk getting into trouble over it. This is real life, not some online drama." "You have kids to think about," he advised. "I get it. Thank you." After paying, I left his office feeling like my whole marriage was a sham. It hurt, but John was right. I sat in my car and cried for 15 minutes. After pulling myself together, I scheduled an appointment with Lisa Hawkins for the next day. She needed financial documents. On the way home, I bought cigarettes, a habit I hadn't indulged in since college. Then I went to a bar for a beer, trying to cope. "You okay?" the bartender asked as I smoked. "Is it that obvious?" I asked. "Unfortunately, yeah," he said with a smile. "Let me guess, you found out your wife's been cheating?" "Yeah, for 12 years, I confessed. "I've seen worse," he nodded. "My grandpa used to say, I felt sorry for myself because I had no shoes, then I met a fellow who had no feet. It gets better. Take care of business, drinking won't help," he advised. "He sounds wise," I said. "He was," the bartender agreed. "Finish your beer, then head home. You won't find answers at the bottom of that glass." I nodded, knowing he was right. Sipping my beer, I pondered the unimaginable, Linda cheating on me. Over time, subtle signs emerged that individually seemed innocuous, but collectively painted a troubling picture. For example, after our second child, Sophie, was born, I underwent a vasectomy, yet Linda resumed birth control. When questioned, she explained it as caution and cycle regulation, which I accepted despite my lack of expertise. Then, as she started traveling with Grant for her new job, her wardrobe choices seemed unsuitable for business, with her suggesting that entertaining was a significant aspect of her role, which, now I understood, included entertaining Grant. I used to call her in the evenings when she was away. I noticed she was always in her room, and sometimes I thought I heard a man's voice nearby. Occasionally, Linda's voice cracked as she spoke. I couldn't explain it then, but I reasoned Grant might be with her. There were times I caught a faint whiff of Grant's aftershave on Linda's clothes, making me nauseous. It seemed she had been in close contact with him. Then, there were the Friday afternoons she claimed to work after her retirement. She explained it as needing her skills for one afternoon a week, strictly business. Now I realize her special skills involved more than business. Her one afternoon a week turned into 2 or 3, and her occasional trips increased, often lasting the entire weekend. This unfolded over the last 4 months. Surprisingly, Linda's attitude toward me stayed the same, remaining affectionate and caring since our wedding. She appeared happy at home with the kids, even though I took on more caregiving duties due to her busy schedule. Feeling burdened, I hired John's firm to investigate, confirming my suspicions. Now the only question is how to split everything. If it were a drunken mistake, maybe I could forgive, but this betrayal over a decade was deliberate. Time for consequences. I finished my drink, nodded to the bartender, and left. Coming home, I saw her car in the garage, which was unexpected. After closing the garage, I found Linda in the house, noticing the smell of cigarettes and beer on me. "You've been smoking," she noted, her concern evident. "And I smell beer. Is everything okay?" "No, today's been terrible," I admitted. "What happened?" she asked, genuinely worried, though I couldn't help but question if it was genuine. "Something," I replied. "I'll be in my office for the night. I won't be much company." "Can I help?" she offered. "Yeah," I thought. "Undo what you've done." "I'm afraid not," I said. "By the way, I'll be away this weekend starting Friday," she mentioned. It was only Tuesday and she's planning another trip already? Again? What, another one? "Didn't you just go on a getaway?" I questioned. "Yes, but something came up," she explained. "Business, you know." "Sure," I replied sarcastically. "What about Sophie's birthday party?" "I am aware," she acknowledged, "but I can't avoid it. Could you explain to her why I won't be there, please?" "No," I refused. "You missed Erin's birthday and our anniversary last year. You can explain to our daughter why you'd rather be with Grant than celebrate her birthday here." "John, please." "You're being unreasonable," she said. "No, Linda," I stated firmly. "You supposedly retired months ago after your company was sold, but you've been gone so much I can't help but wonder what's really going on. Is there something you'd like to tell me?" "What are you saying? Are you accusing me of having an affair?" she asked defensively. "What would you think if the situation were reversed?" I questioned. She backed off a bit after that. "I see your point," she conceded. "But believe me, it's just business." "So you've said," I replied. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have things to do." "Please don't interrupt me. You'll have to look after the kids tonight." I retreated into my home office, closing and locking the door. I heard Linda attempt to open it. "John," she called out. "Please, John, talk to me." "Leave me alone, Linda," I said through gritted teeth. "I'm busy." I heard her shuffle away as I gathered the information Lisa said she would need. Then, I turned to the evidence JN provided. Reading the report, it was difficult to comprehend that this was the woman I had loved and supported for the last 12 years. I donned my headphones and started the DVD. Unless you've been in my shoes, you can't comprehend the range of emotions that flood you when witnessing the woman you adored giving herself to another man willingly. I didn't care how John obtained these videos. All I knew was that any love I once held for Linda had vanished. As I watched her with Grant, I vowed never to touch her again. I forced myself to listen to their carnal conversations. "Hey, are we still on for this weekend?" Grant asked, holding her close. "Definitely," Linda grinned. "Can't go too long without you." "What about Sophie's party?" he asked. "John will handle it," she assured. "He's better with the kids." "I worry he'll catch on," Grant said. "You're supposed to be retired." "I've told you I'm not giving us up," she affirmed. "Family's important, but so are we." "I hope you're right," Grant said. "What if he finds out?" "I'll deal with it," she said confidently. "It won't be easy," he warned. "I'll manage," she said. "He hasn't caught on in 12 years. "How long will this last?" Grant asked. "As long as possible," she declared. Shutting off the video, I tucked the DVD away and approached the office door. "What?" I said. "The kids are going to bed. Can you at least say goodnight?" she asked. "Yeah, hold on," I said, shutting down my computer and going upstairs. Despite my turmoil, I smiled as I tucked them in. Sophie seemed worried. "Are you okay, Daddy?" she asked. "Yeah, I'm fine. Go to sleep, sweetheart. I love you," I said. "I love you too," she said, kissing my cheek. After leaving her room, I went downstairs for coffee. "I kept dinner warm," Linda said. "I'm not hungry," I said, going to the patio and lighting a cigarette. Linda joined me, trying to kiss me. I turned my head, letting her kiss my cheek. "What's wrong?" she asked, concerned. "You haven't smoked since college." "We don't always get what we want," I said. "What do you mean?" she asked. I shook my head. "It's too late," I said. "Too late for what?" she pressed. "You're savvy," I said. "Or figure it out. Please leave me alone." "Maybe I can help," she offered. "Sorry for being abrupt," I said, softening. "Work's getting to me, maybe in a couple of days." I didn't like lying, but why not to a liar? "Okay," she said softly, tears forming. She went inside. I smoked 2 more cigarettes before joining her. After a shower to rid myself of the smoke, I wore pajamas rarely used and got into bed. Linda reached out, but I pushed her away, a first in our marriage. "John," she started. I turned away, refusing her kiss goodnight. "Linda," I muttered. She cried softly, but I didn't care. The next day, I readied for work and spent time with the kids before leaving without acknowledging Linda. She looked at me strangely. "Don't I get a kiss anymore?" she asked. "Sorry," I said, blowing her a kiss. "I love you," she said. "Yeah, me too," I replied, leaving. At the office, work was tough. I confided in my boss, who advised taking time off if needed. Later, I met Lisa. "Good afternoon, Mr. Walker," she greeted. We discussed my situation. "I want as much as I can get," I said, "especially custody." "Mothers usually get custody," she cautioned. "I've been their caregiver for a decade," I countered, and she admitted I'm a better parent. "That's helpful. We can use that," Lisa said, reviewing the financial data. "Your wife received a significant sum from the company's sale. The dividends she gets rival your salary, which works in our favor." "So, does that mean no alimony?" I asked. "Or very little," Lisa confirmed. "She's still young, so she can work. If we secure custody for you, we might get child support from her." "What about the house?" I questioned. "If you get custody, you can stay in the house, and she might pay half the mortgage. But if she gets custody, you might pay half the mortgage plus child support," she explained. "Or we could sell the house and split the proceeds." "And our retirement and bank accounts?" I pressed. "We'll leave retirement accounts alone. You keep your 401ks. The rest will be divided evenly," she assured. "What about Grant Jacobs? Can I sue him?" I asked. "Not in this state, but we'll mention him in the proceedings." "You could sue for emotional distress, but it might not go far," she said. "And his sister, Natalie?" "She knew about it," I added. "We can file if you want," Lisa confirmed. "When can we file all of this?" I asked. "We can have it done by Friday," she said. "Any rush?" "I want her served late Saturday afternoon. She'll be away for the weekend with Grant," I revealed. "Ah, shock and awe. We can arrange that, but there's an extra cost for a Saturday process server," she noted. "That's fine, go ahead," I instructed. "All right, John," she said, concluding with a handshake. She reminded me not to act rashly before taking my retainer check. Leaving her office, I felt in control again. At home, I found Linda's car in the garage, surprising as she was at the office on a Wednesday. Her warm car and the aroma of pot roast greeted me inside. "Hi there," Linda greeted from the kitchen. "You're home early, everything all right?" "Yeah," I replied. "I hope today is better than yesterday," she said. "A bit. I'm managing," I said. "That's good. Dinner?" she asked. "I made pot roast." "I'll have some," I agreed. "It smells great." "Did you go to the office?" I asked. "Yeah, for a couple of hours," she said, "preparing for the weekend." "Did you talk to Sophie?" I asked. "Yes, she's not thrilled, but she'll come around," Linda assured. "Where are the kids?" I questioned. "In their rooms doing homework," she replied. "You're still going on this trip with Grant?" I probed. "Yes, purely business," she insisted. "Just business." "When do you plan to retire?" I asked. "I'm retired. They just need my expertise," she said. "Can't say how long they'll need me." "Seems like you might as well go back full-time." "You're practically doing it now," I remarked. "What do you mean?" she asked, puzzled. "With all the hours you're putting in, it's almost like you're on their payroll," I noted. "Why do you say that?" she inquired. "I'm actually making more now with my retirement." After changing into more relaxed attire, I complimented her cooking skills on the pot roast. She had always been exceptional, and I'd missed that. Spending time with the kids, I retreated into my office and locked the door. Linda knocked, realizing it was locked. "Planning to stay in here tonight?" she asked. "I think so. I still have a lot to do, and I'm feeling under the weather," I replied. "I'll crash on the futon to avoid getting you sick before your trip." "All right, take care, John. I love you," she said. "Yeah, me too," I murmured, closing the door. Turning to my computer, I found what I needed, completed a form, and set a reminder to call the next day for confirmation. Thursday unfolded much like Wednesday, with Linda attempting to seduce me into bed wearing a sheer nightgown. However, knowing about her affair stripped away any allure her body held for me. "I'm sorry, Linda, but I feel a terrible migraine coming on," I murmured softly. "I'll rest here in the office tonight." A tear traced down her cheek as she turned away, but I remained indifferent. She called me at noon the next day to inform me of her departure. "I hope you're feeling better, John," she said. "Maybe we can reconnect when I return on Monday." "Thanks for letting me know," I replied. "I love you, John," she insisted. "Sure," I responded. "Have a safe trip. Goodbye, Linda." Ending the call, I dialed Lisa's number. "I'm filing the paperwork now, John," she informed me. "It'll be served at 5:30 tomorrow at Grant's house, just as you requested. Natalie will be served on Monday." "Thank you, Lisa," I said, concluding the call. I locked up my office and returned home, preparing for the movers' arrival. I handed them a bag containing Linda's wedding dress, alterations, and a note, my wedding ring, and our torn marriage certificate, requesting it be delivered to Linda at Grant's house the next day at 5:30 p.m., along with $250 bills as tips. "I'll handle this personally, Mr. Walker," the young man assured, taking the bag. "Thank you," I said. Reheating pot roast leftovers, I dined in the living room while watching TV. That night, I slept soundly in the master bed. At noon the next day, Linda's parents arrived with the children. I'd been up, preparing for Sophie's birthday party in the backyard, which started around 3:00 p.m. Linda had ordered a cake, which I picked up earlier that morning and stored in the fridge. "You've been busy," remarked Rhonda, Linda's mother, as she entered. "I didn't have much choice," I replied. "I just hope everything goes smoothly." "The kids will enjoy themselves," she reassured. "Did Sophie tell you Linda won't be here?" I asked. "Yes, she did," Rhonda confirmed. "I can't believe Linda would miss her daughter's birthday." She gave me a curious look. "Is everything all right between you two?" I ushered the kids upstairs to prepare for the party before addressing Rhonda and her husband George. "No, it's not," I admitted. "I hate to break it to you, but I'm divorcing Linda." "What?" exclaimed George. "Why?" "She's been having an affair with her boss for 12 years, I revealed. "That's where she is now." "Oh my God," gasped Rhonda. "Are you sure?" "I am. I hired an investigator," I explained, offering to show them the report, which Rhonda declined. "I'd like to see that report," George interjected. "While you're doing that, I'll finish preparing for Sophie's party," Rhonda decided. I thanked Rhonda and led George to my home office, handing him the report. He shook his head in disbelief after reading about Linda's involvement with Grant. "That idiot," he muttered, handing back the report. "Sorry, John. It's hard to accept." "I understand," I sympathized. "What about Grant?" George asked. "I've sued him and his sister for emotional distress," I explained. He scoffed. "Just a lawsuit?" he scoffed. "After what he did?" "I get it, George," I acknowledged, "but I can't risk jail time with 2 kids." "True," he conceded, "but Grant needs to be dealt with." "I can't let you get in trouble," I insisted. "Don't worry, I won't land in jail," he assured. George was tough, and his plan was his own. "What's the plan?" I asked. "Better you don't know," he said with a grin. "Okay," I agreed. He clapped my shoulder. "Let's enjoy time with the kids," he suggested. Outside, Rhonda had set up for the party. Sophie was amazed by the decorations. "Thank you, Daddy," she said, embracing me. "This is so wonderful. I wish Mom were here to see this." "I do too," I replied. "We can take pictures for her to see later, okay?" "Okay," she agreed. I fired up the grill and started cooking hamburgers and hot dogs for everyone. Around 4:30 p.m., the doorbell rang, signaling the beginning. Over the next half hour, more than a dozen parents arrived with their children. All of them were Sophie's school friends, and they were all enjoying themselves in the backyard. Among the last to arrive were Natalie and her husband Ralph, with their daughter Denise. I welcomed them inside and directed Denise to join the party in the backyard. I offered Natalie and Ralph something to drink, and they graciously accepted. "I'm surprised to see you here, Natalie. I thought you and Ralph had an important business trip this weekend," I remarked. "That's Grant and Linda's responsibility," she clarified. "I'm just there to support them in the office." "I see," I responded. "John, is everything okay?" Natalie inquired. "Between you and Linda, I mean." "Why do you ask?" I countered. "You're not wearing your wedding ring," she pointed out. I glanced at my finger and noticed the indentation where my ring used to be. "I returned it to her," I explained. "Maybe Grant will have better luck keeping her faithful than I did." "What do you mean by that?" Natalie pressed. "Let's not play games, Natalie," I retorted. "I know your brother's been involved with Linda for the past 12 years. I'll admit, you both did a good job of deceiving me all this time." "John, please, Linda still loves you," Natalie pleaded. "Yes, so much that she lied and betrayed me for over a decade. I can't even begin to describe how loved I feel right now," I said sarcastically. "So what's your plan?" Natalie asked. "What do you think? I'm divorcing her. She and Grant will be served soon," I stated, checking my watch. "Served?" Natalie questioned. "Yes. Linda will receive divorce papers and I'm suing Grant. You'll be served on Monday," I informed her. "Me? Why are you suing me? I haven't done anything," Natalie protested. "Exactly," I said. "For over a decade you knew about their affair. My investigator even suggested you might have facilitated it, and all the while you pretended to be my friend. You could have said or done something, but you didn't. How many times have you sat in my house, enjoyed my hospitality, knowing what Linda was doing with your brother? Did you find it amusing to make me a fool? Now my marriage and my family are shattered, and you're partly responsible for that. Thanks to the 3 of you, I'll never be able to love or trust another woman again, and my children have lost their mother. I hope you're satisfied." "John, I'm truly sorry," she said. Sorry? Sorry isn't enough, Natalie," I asserted. "For 12 years, the 3 of you conspired to ruin my family. You didn't care about the impact on me or my children, and now you've succeeded." "It wasn't like that," Natalie insisted. Really? Was it all just business between the three of you? I scoffed. At first, yes, she admitted. It was Grant's idea initially. Linda went along with it because she wanted the job, but she wasn't happy about it. Over time, things changed. And what about after you sold your company and supposedly retired? I questioned. That was Linda's decision, Natalie clarified. I thought it would end, but Linda chose to continue the affair. Then she made a terrible choice, I remarked, but you still played a part. I'm truly sorry, John, she said. None of us wanted to hurt you. But you did, I concluded, in the worst possible way. It's best if you gather your family and leave my house, Natalie. She nodded silently. I understand, John, she whispered before departing to fetch Denise and Ralph. And Natalie, I called after her. She turned to face me. Don't ever come back. She wiped away a tear and left with Denise and Ralph. Linda and Grant were lying undressed in his bed when her phone buzzed, signaling a new message. Assuming it was John sending pictures from Sophie's party. She reached for her phone on the nightstand and read the text from Natalie. He knows everything. Oh no, she exclaimed. What's wrong? Grant inquired. That was Natalie, she said. John knows everything, Linda disclosed. I should get cleaned up and go home. Are you sure that's wise? Grant questioned. Yes, Linda affirmed. She hastily put on a bathrobe and got out of bed. Just then they heard the doorbell. Who could that be? Grant wondered aloud. He hastily dressed and went downstairs with Linda following close behind. Opening the door, he found a man standing there. How can I help you? Grant asked. Are you Grant Jacobs? The man queried. Yes, Grant replied. And is Linda Walker also present? The man continued. That's me, Linda interjected, stepping forward. I'll need to see some identification, the man requested. Why? Grant queried as he retrieved his wallet. The man silently examined Grant's license before, handing him an envelope. You've been served, the man declared. Miss Walker, I'll need to see identification as well. Sure, Linda complied, retrieving her wallet. After inspecting her license, the man handed her an envelope. You've been served, he stated. Additionally, there's a restraining order included with these documents. You are both prohibited from approaching Mr. John Walker, his residence, his workplace, and his children, including their school, within a 500-foot radius. Failure to comply could result in arrest. Good day. With that, the man left, leaving Linda and Grant stunned. Excuse me, is Linda Walker here? Another man, dressed casually, inquired. Yes, that's me, Linda confirmed. The man handed her a paper bag with an envelope attached, and she accepted it, puzzled. I was instructed to deliver this to you personally, ma'am. I also have several other boxes, the man explained. Where should I put them? Grant and Linda exchanged glances before Grant responded. Just leave them in the front room for now, he instructed. Thank you, sir, the man acknowledged before heading back to the truck. As they watched, several boxes were brought in and stacked in the front room, as directed by Grant. While this was happening, Linda opened the envelope. Inside was a man's wedding ring, a note, and her marriage license torn into 4 pieces. Tears streamed down her face as she read the note. Linda, throughout our marriage, I have only loved and supported you. Imagine my shock upon discovering your affair with Grant Jacobs over the past 12 years. This is how you repay my love, with deceit and infidelity? All this time you claimed it was just business, but I now know it was much more than that. I hope it was worth it. I urge you to seek legal counsel promptly. Our finances have been divided per the divorce papers, and I have changed the locks on our doors. As I have been the primary caregiver for our children since your involvement with Grant began, I am seeking full custody. However, I am open to visitation arrangements. Please have your attorney contact mine to coordinate. Furthermore, as Grant has offered you shelter, I have sent your belongings to his residence. If there are any items you wish to retrieve from our home, please have your attorney contact mine to arrange it. I have no desire for further contact with you. Please refrain from reaching out to our children or me, or I will enforce the restraining order. I implore you not to contest the divorce terms. I do not wish to escalate matters for the sake of our children, but I will if necessary. I possess photographic evidence, videos, and a comprehensive investigator's report documenting your recent activities. I have not yet disclosed the reason for our divorce to the children, but I will when the time is appropriate. Your parents are aware of the situation, though they have not seen the evidence. Please do what is right. For once, and bring an end to this charade of a marriage. As of now, Linda, you are dead to me. Goodbye, John, overcome with emotion. Linda opened the paper bag and found the ashes of her wedding gown, the very gown she wore when she married John. She collapsed to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. Grant wrapped his arms around her and read the letter. He's such an idiot, he muttered. I'll give him a piece of my mind. No, Grant, please don't. I don't want you to end up in jail. This is my mess to clean up, she replied. What did you find out, he asked. He's suing me for causing him emotional distress, Grant revealed. He's demanding $5 million. I'll contact my lawyer and see what options we have. I wonder if he's going after Natalie too, Linda pondered. Let's check, Grant suggested, reaching for his phone. If he is, we should meet to discuss this and try to minimize the damage. After the birthday party wrapped up, I expressed gratitude to everyone for attending and for the thoughtful gifts. As I surveyed the cluttered house, I knew I had my work cut out for me. Sophie approached me with tears in her eyes. What's wrong, honey? I asked, embracing her. I wish Mom could have been here, she sniffled. I missed her. Yeah, me too, I acknowledged. Unfortunately, your mother had other plans. Sophie looked at me with a mix of sadness and curiosity. Are you divorcing her? She inquired tearfully. I didn't want to spoil her day, but I knew I couldn't evade the conversation forever. We'll discuss that later, okay? It's because of that Grant guy, right? Aaron chimed in. What makes you say that? I questioned. I've overheard Mom talking to him on the phone a few times, he explained. It was intriguing, but I decided not to probe further, at least for now. We'll talk more tomorrow, I asserted. Today is Sophie's birthday. Right now I need your help cleaning up, all right? Okay, Dad, Aaron complied. I hugged Sophie once more and kissed her on the cheek. Everything will be okay, I assured her, wiping away her tears. Well, I love you. I love you too, Daddy, she reciprocated. Rhonda and George stayed behind to assist with the cleanup. Are you going to be all right, John? Rhonda inquired before they departed. I'll manage, I replied. Thanks for pitching in. Of course, she responded. If you need anything at all, don't hesitate to ask. I appreciate it, I expressed. Rhonda embraced me and George shook my hand. Take care, son, he bid me farewell. After they drove off, exhausted, I retreated upstairs and fell asleep almost instantly. The following day, I rose early and completed my usual Sunday tasks. After preparing breakfast for us while I mowed the lawn, Aaron handled the edging. Once we finished, we tidied up and put away the equipment. After lunch, I was surprised to find Sophie making sandwiches for us. We dined together. At the table, before clearing our plates, Sophie regarded me seriously as we finished. All right, Dad, she began. You need to tell us what's going on. I dreaded this conversation, but it was inevitable. I gathered the kids in the living room, and we all took a seat. There's no easy way to say this, so I'll just be straightforward, I began. I'm divorcing your mother. The news was met with silence from the kids, no outbursts as I had anticipated. They seemed to take it in stride. She's been cheating on you with that Grant guy, hasn't she? Aaron ventured. Yeah, I admitted quietly, nodding. I figured as much, Aaron remarked. I bet it's been happening for a while, huh? What makes you think that? I asked. Just the way she talks to him, he explained. I've heard her on the phone. She talks to him the same way she talks to you, Dad. It was a revelation. Why hadn't I noticed that myself? The answer was clear. Until recently, I trusted her implicitly and respected her privacy. I saw no reason to eavesdrop on her conversations with Grant or anyone else. So, how long has it been going on, Dad? Sophie inquired. As far as I can figure, it's been about 12 years, sweetheart, I replied. She reacted with a gasp. So that means she started not long after I was born, she remarked. Pretty much, I confirmed. Damn her, Sophie muttered. Sorry, Dad, she quickly added, sensing my reaction. Understanding her frustration, I let it slide this time. Can I stay with you, she asked. Absolutely, if that's what you want, I assured her. Me too, Dad, Aaron chimed in. You've always been there for us. Thank you, guys, that means the world to me, I expressed. Actually, I've requested custody of you both, I revealed. I opened my arms, and they both enveloped me in a hug. We shared a heartfelt embrace, and I felt overwhelmed with joy that my children wanted to remain with me. After our tearful moment, we continued with the rest of the day, although there was an underlying sadness in the air. The following days passed without incident. George and Rhonda agreed to pick up the kids after school and stayed with us until I returned from work. I felt bad about inconveniencing them, but they were understanding and gladly lent a hand. Rhonda even prepared our dinner, which was a tremendous help. On Tuesday, I received a call from my attorney, Lisa. Linda had consulted with her own lawyer and expressed a desire to visit the children. I was apprehensive about having her at the house and feared she might do something rash, like taking off with them. What about the restraining order? I inquired. If you agree, we could temporarily suspend it for a designated period, say, from 9 a.m. Friday to 9 a.m. Sunday, Lisa proposed. I know it's difficult, but appearing reasonable is crucial. I understand. What if she visits the kids at her parents' house on Saturday? I suggested. I can drop them off there on Friday after school and pick them up either Saturday night or Sunday. I'll propose that and see how her lawyer responds, Lisa agreed. Under no circumstances should Grant or Natalie be present, I emphasized, and there's a chance the kids might not want to see her. They're not exactly thrilled with her right now. I'll convey that, Lisa assured me. Anything else? I inquired. Yes, her lawyer wants access to the full PI report, Lisa informed me. I've compiled a copy and sent it over. She should receive it by Thursday at the latest. So she's retained legal counsel? I confirmed. Yes, she hired Beth Sawyer on Monday, Lisa confirmed. It's surprising since Beth detests cheaters almost as much as I do. I suspect it's because she works in the same firm as Grant's attorney. Regardless, I'll discuss it with Beth and keep you updated. The next day, Lisa informed me that Linda and her lawyer had agreed to my terms, provided I suspended the restraining order for 36 hours, from midnight Saturday to noon Sunday. And it only applied to Linda, not Grant or Natalie. They also agreed that Linda would visit with the children at her parents' house and refrain from taking them anywhere. If the kids were comfortable with the arrangement, Linda would spend the night there with them. Reluctantly, I accepted these terms, not wanting to appear unreasonable to the court. Initially, the children were hesitant, but I managed to convince them to give it a chance. George and Rhonda agreed to pick them up after school on Friday and return them to the house on Sunday afternoon after their visit. I had reservations, but I trusted George and Rhonda. George even suggested taking me to a bar to catch some sports over a beer on Saturday night. On Friday morning, I ensured the children had all they needed for the weekend. After hugging and kissing them, I drove them to school, reminding them to contact me if Grant, Natalie, or their mother tried to approach them. Only after confirming they were safely inside the building did I head to work. The following evening, around 5:30, George picked me up, and we headed to the Flat Stick Pub, a wrestling-themed sports bar downtown. Over burgers and beers, we caught up while watching the action on the numerous screens. Linda showed up around 9 this morning, George informed me. It was tense initially, but things eased up a bit. The kids aren't thrilled with her and made it clear. Surprisingly, she came clean. That's unexpected, I remarked. She claims she still loves you. Seems like she might aim for reconciliation, George said. Is that something you'd consider? I'm afraid not, George, I replied. After 12 years of deception, it's hard to see past that. I understand. Did you really burn her wedding dress? That gown set me back over $2,000 when you two got married, George recalled. It felt appropriate at the time. I admitted. She mentioned her lawyer thoroughly reviewed the PI report and gave her a stern talking to, George added. I think she's starting to grasp your perspective. Too little, too late, I stated. George nodded, taking a sip of his beer. Suddenly, we heard a commotion behind me. Before I could react, something struck my head, and I saw stars as I fell. I managed to dodge a subsequent blow aimed at me. I'm going to eliminate you, you idiot, Grant's voice rang out. Seeing him looming over me, I instinctively retaliated. Recalling self-defense lessons from my father, I landed a fierce kick to Grant's groin as he advanced, causing him to collapse. Seizing the opportunity, I delivered several blows to his face in rapid succession. It wasn't a calculated attack with finesse. It was raw fury and a desire to retaliate against the man who shattered my marriage and family happiness. Unaware that Grant was already unconscious, I relentlessly struck him until 2 pairs of hands pulled me away. As I came to, I found myself in a hospital bed, being examined by a doctor. My right hand was bandaged, and my left hand and forearm were in a cast. A throbbing headache plagued me. He'll be all right, the doctor assured George. While he'll have a headache for some time, there's no sign of a concussion. We'll administer pain relief and let him rest before discharge. Thank you, doctor, George responded. Turning to me, he relayed the doctor's assessment. You'll pull through, although you're hurting. Grant came out worse. He's losing a testicle, lost teeth, and nearly lost an eye. You apparently landed a solid punch on his jaw. Was that him? I croaked. How long have I been here? Since last night. It's now on Sunday morning, George informed me. Oh, and there are a couple of officers outside who want to speak with you. Ready for that? I might as well get it over with, I replied. George signaled the officers who entered the room. I'm Sergeant Smith, and this is Officer Jones. We responded to your altercation at the Flat Stick Pub last night. Smith introduced himself. How are you feeling this morning, sir? I feel like I've been punched upside the head, I expressed to him. Smith smiled and checked his notes. What happened last night? He inquired. I don't have much to share, I replied. I was having a burger and beer with my father-in-law here, then suddenly I got struck in the head. The guy threatened my life, so I defended myself. Smith nodded. That aligns with what the witnesses reported, he confirmed, referring to his notes. The surveillance footage supports your account. Do you know the assailant? Yes, Sergeant. His name is Grant Jacobs. I have a lawsuit against him, and he's part of my divorce proceedings, I disclosed. Divorce? The sergeant echoed. Yes, I affirmed. Got it. He jotted it down in his notebook. I assume you want to press. Charges? Yes, absolutely, I asserted. There's also a restraining order against him. Understood, he acknowledged. We'll look into that. We'll handle it from here, Mr. Walker. You may be approached for further questioning, so please refrain from leaving town for a while. No problem, Sergeant, I assured him, raising my hands. He smiled and left the room with his colleague. After they departed, Rhonda, Linda, and the kids entered. Why is she here? I questioned, glancing at Linda. My restraining order doesn't take effect until noon, Linda explained. I assumed you'd be with your boyfriend, I remarked. She looked down, embarrassed. I wanted to see you first, she admitted. Besides, Natalie's with him, and he's still recovering. I nodded, and the kids gathered around me. Sophie's eyes were watery. Are you going to be okay, Daddy? She asked. I'll be all right, sweetheart, I reassured her. I heard you really gave it to Grant last night, Aaron said with a grin. That's the word on the street, I said, looking at George, but it's not something to boast about, you hear me? Got it, Dad, Aaron replied. Are you going to be okay, John? Linda inquired. He'll be fine, Sophie assured her mother. We'll take care of him, won't we, Aaron? Yeah, we got this, my son affirmed. Linda glanced at our teenage children before speaking. If you guys don't mind, I'd like to have a private chat with your father for a few minutes, she requested. They hesitated before agreeing. Sure, Sophie said, but we'll be just outside the door. Come on, Aaron, she added, reaching for her brother. They exited, followed by George and Rhonda. John, Linda began after they left, I can't express how sorry I am about everything. Well, as I told Natalie last Saturday, sorry doesn't even scratch the surface, I stated. You deceived and betrayed me for what, 12 years? And you think sorry is enough to make it all better? Was I that inadequate as a husband to you? All I ever did was love and support you. I don't understand. You are the best husband and father anyone could wish for, she replied sadly. But even that wasn't sufficient for you, was it? I questioned. It's not like that, she defended. Really, that's what it seems like to me, I countered. You don't comprehend, she insisted. Then help me understand, I urged. At first it was merely a means to secure my job, she confessed. Grant indicated that having lovemaking with me was a condition for obtaining the position. That's exploitation, I pointed out. That's illegal. Why didn't you come to me first? We could have taken action. Oh, I see, you were desperate for that job, so much so that you thought sleeping with Grant was a small price to pay, even if it tore apart our family. I essentially made a pact with the devil, she admitted. So now you're shifting blame to the devil? I scoffed. Give me a break. The truth is, you wanted that job so badly that you were willing to sleep with him for it, even if it cost you everything. What happened to it's just business? Tell me, Linda, where does the destruction of our family fit into your profit and loss statement, huh? I'd like to know why you continued even after supposedly retiring. That was my fault, she admitted. I suppose I reached a point where I believed I could have the best of both worlds. You developed feelings for him, didn't you? That's why you persisted. How long did you plan to continue indefinitely? Did you truly believe I'd never discover the truth, or did you expect me to simply acquiesce once I did? And remember, I'm aware of far more than you realize, I countered. Yes, I grew attached to him, she confessed. It became difficult not to after all those years. I assumed your love for me would allow me this indulgence. I tried my best to keep it from detracting anything from our relationship. Are you serious? I questioned incredulously. Every moment you spent with him detracted from us. Surely you grasped the concept of opportunity cost, the forfeit of potential benefit from other options when one is chosen. You chose him over your family. Consequently, you forfeited your family. But I still love you, she insisted. My love for you never waned. But you lost respect for me, I pointed out. She appeared shocked. No, that's not true, she denied. Yes, you did, I asserted. That's why you promised him you'd continue sleeping with him indefinitely and discussed threatening to accuse me of maltreatment in a divorce. Her eyes widened. You heard that? She gasped. Yes, and more, I confirmed. For instance, you told Grant you'd prefer spending time with him over our daughter on her birthday. What kind of mother does that? What message do you think that sends to an impressionable teenager? Did you consider her feelings, or Aaron's, when you missed his birthday last year? She flinched at that. I suppose I failed as a wife and mother, she murmured. Your words, not mine, but if they resonate with you, I said, shrugging. By the way, I can assure your lover he won't be pursued for child support. Yes, I had DNA tests conducted, and the children are mine. She looked at me, stunned. Oh my God, you thought I'd do that to you? She exclaimed. Well, you deceived me for 12 years, I reminded her. You schemed and misled me all that time, concealing your affair. What would you expect? You might also find comfort in knowing I haven't contracted anything from either of you. You may not be aware, but Grant enjoys playing the field. You're not his only conquest. I suspected, but I wasn't certain. What should I do now? She inquired. Sign the divorce papers, Linda. Put an end to this charade of a marriage. Then seek help and get your life in order, for the children's sake, I advised. I suspect. You'll have ample time. I imagine Grant will be detained by the state for some time. You're probably right, she conceded. Okay, I'll sign the papers. I'm sorry, John, for everything. You've said that, I reminded her. I suppose I have, haven't I? Well, thank you for allowing me time with the kids this weekend, she acknowledged. You're welcome, I replied. I know you don't believe me, but I truly love you, she insisted, and I wish you could find it in your heart for us to reconcile. You're correct. I don't believe you, but I appreciate you saying so, I admitted. I suppose a small part of me will always care for you too, but it's insufficient. I need to be able to trust my partner, and after what you've done, I don't know if I'll ever trust anyone again. She nodded as tears streamed down her face. I get it, she murmured. Goodbye, John. She leaned in and planted a kiss on my cheek. Goodbye, Linda, I responded. She turned and exited the room, tears streaming down her face. George, Rhonda, and the kids entered after her departure. Everything okay, son? George inquired. Yeah, I assured him. We had a talk. I think she finally realizes the extent of her mistakes. Does that mean you and Mom are reconciling? Sophie asked. I shook my head. No, sweetheart, I clarified. But you both love each other, she reasoned. Love alone isn't always enough to sustain a marriage, Sophie, I explained. Trust is equally important, and right now I don't trust her. You'll understand this someday. The doctor conducted one final check and discharged me. George drove me home with the kids. Later that night, I received a frantic call from George and Rhonda. Natalie informed them that Linda had attempted self-destruction by overdosing on sleeping pills and hard drinks. Natalie discovered her unconscious at Grant's residence while retrieving some of his belongings. A note on Linda's nightstand simply read, I'm sorry. Though she nearly succumbed to the overdose, Linda survived and spent a couple of days in the hospital. Following evaluation by mental health professionals, she was released into George and Rhonda's care, eventually relocating back in with them. Linda signed the divorce papers without contesting. Lisa informed me that I'd be legally single in 90 days. Free, yeah, right. Grant and Natalie's attorney swiftly settled with us for half of my initial claim. Consequently, I received approximately $3.5 million after legal fees. I allocated $1 million for each child's college fund and saved the remainder. I began planning a Mediterranean cruise for the kids during their next summer vacation. Grant received a 10-year prison sentence for aggravated assault, battery, and attempted homicide based on video evidence from the attack. He'd be eligible for parole in about 8.5 years. I saw Linda during visits to George and Rhonda's home. Sometimes we'd chat briefly, but I couldn't overlook her actions. She sought counseling to understand her motives, clinging to the hope of reconciliation. I was pleased she sought help, but it felt like closing the stable door after the horse had bolted. Over time, she rebuilt a relationship with the kids, which I welcomed. George mentioned she focused on writing for business blogs and refrained from dating. She expressed sadness upon learning of the cruise without her, but managed to cope, wishing us well. The kids frequently sent her text updates with photos from our travels. I met a charming woman, Nikki, from British Columbia, also on a post-divorce cruise. She was slightly younger than Linda, had shoulder-length blonde hair, and a bubbly demeanor. I enjoyed her habit of ending sentences with, eh. She had 2 children, spending the summer with grandparents in Idaho, similar in age to mine. We shared stories about our pasts and occasionally shared a bed. Sophie teased me, singing, Daddy's got a girlfriend, while nudging me. We exchanged contact details at the cruise's end, promising to keep in touch via email and Skype. Though uncertain of what the future held, we spoke online at least twice weekly. We adjusted to life without Linda. My employer accommodated my schedule for school runs. I knew Aaron would eventually take over driving duties once he was old enough. Shortly after our return, George visited with some unfortunate news. They're planning to admit Linda to a mental hospital, he informed me. Oh, why? I inquired. Sophie sent her a photo of you three having dinner with that Canadian woman you met on your cruise, he explained. I don't think Sophie meant any damage, but Linda didn't react well. She had a breakdown. Rhonda and I discovered her in the bathtub. She had cut her wrists. Oh my God, I gasped. I'm sorry to hear that. I genuinely felt regretful upon learning about her self-destruction attempt, yet part of me felt a sense of validation. Now she understood a fraction of the pain I experienced when I first discovered her affair with Grant. Yeah, me too. Thankfully, she botched it and survived, but given her history, the doctors concluded she requires constant care and supervision, George shared. Rhonda and I are getting too old to watch over her around the clock, thus they decided to institutionalize her. For how long? I inquired. It's uncertain, son, he responded. It could be a few years, it could be indefinite. I just don't know. Keep me updated if there's anything we can do, I offered. Thank you, son, I appreciate it, he replied. Nikki and I sustained our long-distance relationship, and I found that our frequent conversations deepened our connection. I also caught myself daydreaming about her a lot. She expressed sorrow upon hearing about Linda, primarily for George, Rhonda, and the children, but she echoed my sentiments. During our last conversation, she suggested visiting us with her kids or proposed I bring my children to her home, a 2-story log house situated on 50 wooded acres north of Kamloops, built in the late 1800s. She mentioned having never ventured north of the U.S. border. I found the idea intriguing. Who knows what, if anything, will transpire. In any case, that's a tale for another time.
Caught fiancé texting her ex she misses him. I called off the wedding and ghosted her. I, 26 male, have been engaged to a woman, 27 female, let's call her Ellie. We were supposed to be married next month, and moments ago, I found her sexting with her ex. It hurts so much, huh? Okay, so I've been seeing this woman for over 4 years. Last summer, she brought up the topic of getting married. Honestly, I was taken aback. Not that I wasn't serious, but the thought of marriage didn't cross my mind. But when she talked about it, I was like, why not? I loved her. We'd known each other for 5 years, dating for 4. The next move was definitely marriage for me, so we planned a spring wedding this year. This new year, I bought her a ring to call it official. She too gave me a ring on Valentine's. I thought everything was perfect, until it wasn't. I cannot imagine she has been doing this behind my back. Sorry for spreading this all over. So, Ellie has gone for a 2-day work trip. This morning while I'm working from home, we have a common PC at home. Since she works for a bank, she's not allowed to open her personal email on her work laptop, so she uses the home PC most of the time. I have my personal email logged into my office laptop. I also have a tab, so I rarely use the PC. To her bad luck, my laptop crashed and I had to use the home PC. I logged in through my email and continued with my work. I didn't notice her mailbox was open in another minimized browser. After a while, I saw an email pop up with the name Felix. Too tired to invent a fake name, so Felix, if you're reading this, screw you. I knew that Felix was her college sweetheart and her ex. They had been dating throughout their college years. The reason for the breakup she gave me was that he moved back to his country. It was almost a year after their breakup that we met, and almost a year after knowing each other, I asked her out. Once, in the initial days of our dating, I was talking about my past relationship, which didn't end well. I asked her how she felt about her past. She told me that they broke up amicably, and she wasn't bitter about her ex at all. I don't know why, but it bothered me for a while. For no reason at that time, I asked her if she was still in touch with her ex. She denied it. That was the end of the conversation. She didn't give me any reason to pester her on that point. Fast forward to today. I saw Felix's email. I plainly opened it without thinking twice, and oh my God, it made me throw up. It was an endless chain of emails, the most outrageous thing I've ever seen. This was talking about how she misses him every day, and how she satisfies herself thinking about the wild nights they had. I mostly read her replies, not his. It was about sexual pleasures, how she touches herself, and how she gets wet just by thinking about him. She describes how she wants to be touched by him. Apparently, she craves how he used to bang her back door. Her exact words were, "My hole itches to take you in. It's been ages since someone drilled that hole." I was puking after reading this. One moment I thought, was it really her, or did the account get hacked or something? But it was a long, ongoing thread for months. I can't imagine she's the woman I was madly in love with. Let me tell you, she's a liar. We occasionally go anal. In fact, she's the one who doesn't like it, saying it hurts her. I respect her choices and boundaries, and never force her into something that she's not comfortable with. And this complains about her yearning hole at this moment. I really want to bang her hard and rough and rip her butt off. 2 days back, she had emailed him, "I don't know why I'm even marrying this person when his weenie is half of yours." Huh, To this, he responds, "Huh, poor guy. Could you imagine the pain I went through while reading it? And even while writing this, I want to bury myself somewhere. How can I possibly face myself? That my would-be wife was talking crap about me with her ex without giving me any clue? I'm continuously pinching myself to check if this is actually happening to me or if it's just a bad dream. It's kind of funny that on the same day when she wrote that email, she said to me, 'You're too big for me. You know my body so well. Booyah, you're so good in bed.' This was her exact expression. And don't forget these compliments, I tell you. Does this mean she was lying to me before? This question comes up. Let me clarify. There has never been any problem in bed. She says she doesn't have a large appetite, and we do it mostly 2 to 3 times a week. She goes on a 2-day work trip every 6 months, and she comes home horny. I look forward to satisfying her after that. I really don't know what to do or how to react. Should I wait for her to return and have a confrontation before making any decision, or should I just ghost? Honestly, there's so much rage inside me right now, I feel like smashing everything and burning down the house. I have not spoken to anybody yet, not my family or my friends. I'm getting married next month. What do I even tell these people? That my would-be wife was sexting her ex while lying naked with me? I want to chase her down wherever she is, slam the screen in her face, and ask her for an explanation. Has anyone been in this kind of situation before? How did you deal with this? Man, I'm freaking out. Edit, I'm turning insane. My emotions are just so volatile. It's like a wave. One moment I think I should wait for her to come, another moment drives me crazy, and I want to vanish into thin air. Crap, I haven't moved from this chair for the last 2 hours ever since I discovered the cheating. I guess I have wasted enough time just thinking about the situation. It's time for action. Hey OP, at least you found out before you made it official. She's got enough energy to keep up with her ex while planning a wedding. Talk about multitasking. And then there's Felix. The guy moved countries to get away, yet still manages to worm his way back into her inbox. What a guy. Well, I think the only thing you can do is leave, cancel the wedding, and when people ask why and what's going on, tell them the truth. She just can't let go of the past. You deserve someone who's all in, front and back, mind and heart. Update 1, hello, thanks fellas. I shut down the PC and then reopened this sub from my phone 6 hours later, and boom, 50+ comments. Sorry for not being able to reply to each one of you, but I want to thank all of you who made an effort to read my mumbo-jumbo story and comment and advise. Some of you picked up on me saying I was never engaged. How could I call her my fiancé? I didn't know what social structure you guys follow, but in our case, since we were about to get married and we exchanged rings, I considered myself to be engaged. People asked me if there were any red flags. No, hell no. No red flags at all. She was the one who brought up the topic of marriage. In the last 4 years of dating, there was not a single sign of deceit. It was a perfect relationship. That's what she made it look like. That's the reason I was so much in shock. My first relationship also ended with my girlfriend cheating on me, but it wasn't a shocker because she displayed the red flags all openly. I caught her cheating at her very first instance. Hence, in this relationship, I always kept my eyes and ears open. Talking about updates, so yeah, like most of you suggested, I ghosted. There was nothing left to be confronted with after reading those long threads and emails. I want to thank a particular user for a kicker suggestion. I downloaded the emails and forwarded them to my phone. Though I didn't need any advice yet, it never hurts to have it in my back pocket, you know, just in case. So, I printed it and kept it as a backup. Here comes the action. First, I changed the locks of the house, called my manager and told him about the crisis, not in detail. Just at the surface level that I had to call off my wedding. He sort of understood and gave me 2 weeks to get my crap together. I packed my stuff, booked a cheap motel for a month, and got a discounted rate because of the long stay. Next, I packed all her stuff and sent it to storage. I kept the storage receipt at the door. She had synced her contacts and photos on her Gmail, so I deleted all of them. We had a joint account where we were putting in money for our wedding. I took out my share, which was like 70%. I canceled the venue and got a 50% refund. I canceled all the other bookings, like the photographer, caterer, etc., and got refunds from most of them. Basically, I utilized those 2 days to their full potential. In these 2 days, she texted and called me as usual, but my ghosting had already started. I didn't block her yet. I wanted to see how she would react to all this, if she figured it out at all. There was a series of messages from her in those 2 days. You know, I lost all my contacts from my phone? All the photos are gone. I guess my phone is malfunctioning. Thank God it's backed up on the home PC. What's up with you? Are you okay? Why aren't you replying? Why are you mad at me? What happened to you? Why aren't you responding to my calls? She contacted my parents and brother to check if I was fine. They had no clue about all this. Mom immediately called me. I answered her call and told her not to say a word to Ellie, just tell her that I didn't respond. I promised Mom I would come home the next day and explain everything. She did what I said. The text continued, "Are you safe? Say something, babe. You're scaring me off." Safe my butt, as if she cares. This went on for 2 days until she arrived home to find the house locked and her key non-functional. I went to my parents and informed them I was calling off the wedding. I told them Ellie had been emotionally cheating on me, that's it, no details. They understood and didn't probe further. They're sure to support me through all means, only if I promise not to harm myself. I said I had crossed that phase and was safe in that way. Here's the meaty part. Ellie lost her mind when she saw the house was locked. She got the storage paper at the doorstep. It was signed by me, quite predictable. She relentlessly bombarded my phone with her calls and voicemails. What the hell happened? Are you at home? Why did you do this to me? Did you find someone else? After making fun of me with her ex, she had the audacity to turn around on me and question if I was cheating on her. It was kind of satisfying to see her go through waves of emotions. Her texts and voicemails said so. At one point, she started begging, "Baby, why are you doing this to me? I love you. We're going to get married next month. Whatever issue you have, we can surely resolve it." Then, another moment, she goes, "You're a coward and a juvenile son of a witch. You're no man, you chose to hide. I know you've been effing behind my back." She was projecting her insecurities onto me. When she eventually realized that I had deleted her contacts and pictures and whisked out my share from the joint account, she went crazy. She turned explosive, and that's when I blocked her. She's already hurt me enough. I didn't want to take any more abuse from her. People mentioned in the comments that I dodged a bullet. Indeed, I did. Phew. I've been living in a motel until I figure out what's next. Thank God the wedding invite was not out yet. Sending a cancellation would have been another hassle, with so many questions and explanations. I haven't gotten a call from any of her family members, friends, or acquaintances. I've not shown her emails to anyone yet, but I've kept them safe. I have blocked her from everywhere. I've exited all the groups we were part of. Thanks for all the comments. Last day I was worse, today is no better, but lighter than that day. I hope to come out of this. Thanks. I feel like that's such a cheater thing to do. If someone accuses you of being unfaithful, accuse them right back. Here's to the op for turning what could have been a disastrous wedding into a triumph of self-respect and quick thinking. You've shown resilience, intelligence, and a killer sense of humor. Keep riding this wave of liberation, and before you know it, you'll be looking back on this as the best bullet you ever dodged. Update 2. Hello all, it's been a while since then. Starting from where I left off, after being denied entry into the house, she thought I was inside. She banged on the door and window, and only stopped when the angry neighbors came out to shut her up. She then showed up at my workplace. I had predicted her move, hence, I took a break. I informed the reception that any visitors looking for me should know that I was on sabbatical for the near future. Ellie left a note for me at the reception. It read, "You can't hide from me, you son of a witch. I'm going to hunt you down and rip you apart." I was floored by her shamelessness. After what she had done to me, she had the balls to write such things to me. It boiled my blood, and I wanted to hunt her down, find her cheating butt, and rip it apart, but I knew it was her move. She deliberately wrote that. She's a manipulative witch, and she knows how to use her words to play with others' emotions. I took a deep breath and talked myself out of this thought. All this was making me crazy, so I called my manager and asked if I could work remotely instead of sulking in bed all day. He approved it and told me to take the work easy. I worked remotely for a month. The motel was at a remote corner of the town. I intentionally chose a secluded place. I didn't want to see any familiar faces. After locking myself away for a couple of days, I stepped out, roamed around the nearby woods and an abandoned lake. It was a sort of nature therapy. I thought I was making progress until the wedding day arrived. Not everyone remembered, but some of my close friends and relatives did remember that the wedding was around the corner, and there was no invite. Slowly, I informed my close friends about it. They were equally shocked. None of them saw it coming. My best friend had spent the most time with us. I asked him to tell me honestly if he ever felt that Ellie wanted to ride her ex, or, in general, if she was harboring this kind of hatred for me. He said he thought she was perfect wife material. Now, I don't know if we were fools, or if she's a player and hit it so well. It was after weeks that I was talking about the cheating again. I thought it would help the remaining bit of me to move on, but no, it made me more miserable. One more thing, we had booked our honeymoon to Alaska. When I was canceling the other wedding stuff, I tried canceling this too, but it was non-refundable. The trip was uninsured, so I left it that way. So, I decided to go for it. However, I was worried about Ellie following me here because she too had the details of the trip itinerary. You never know, she could also think of relaxing her mind through this trip. But I had deleted her inbox. Yay! The booking was done through my account, so there's no way for her to access it from her end. So here I am, sitting in a cozy cabin amidst the Alaskan scenic beauty and writing about my miserable life. I hope it ends here, and I leave all my worries and insecurities in this dense wood. Showing up at your workplace and leaving a note that sounds like it was penned by a serial killer, that's some next-level shamelessness. When the wedding day rolled around and you had to spill the beans to your friends and family, ouch, but it had to be done. Nothing like crossing your T's and dotting your I's. Let's hope the only thing you catch out there amidst the Alaskan beauty is a breath of fresh air and not Ellie lurking in the shadows with another psychotic note. Update 3, life is funny. Guess who I bumped into? Yes, my ex, Ellie. She did follow me here because she couldn't find me anywhere in the city. The encounter was spooky, at least in the first 30 seconds. I was lingering around the deserted landscape, and from a distance, I saw a woman approaching me. I didn't think too much about it. As she came nearer, I realized it was Ellie. It was too funny and frustrating at the same time. What could I do? I couldn't run away from her. The only sensible thing to do was to walk away, but she ran and stopped me. I said I didn't want to talk. She kept yelling that she searched for me everywhere in town, left me a note at my office to pinch on my vulnerability, and took a flight to Alaska as a guesswork, only to have it confirmed at the hotel that I had checked in. The trip is going to end tomorrow, and yesterday it clicked for her that I might be traveling alone on our honeymoon. She called up the airlines and the hotel, gave my details, and checked if I had canceled the trip. The plan was on, so she took a bet, booked the first flight to Alaska, took the details from the hotel about my plans for today, and came chasing me. She ranted about everything while following me for half a mile. I turned back and said, "I don't care. You need to leave." She said she wouldn't until I heard her side of the story. I said I didn't need to know more. After a while, I was drained, not only from marching away, but from all the emotions flowing down my nerves. I stood and asked her to complete her side of the story. She goes, "How could you ghost me like this? We were supposed to be married last week. You cannot do this to us. If there was something bothering you, we could have sat and discussed it. Have I ever ignored your feelings? No, right? You cannot break up with me just for this trivial matter. I'm turning 28 in 3 months. I need to get pregnant and have a baby before I turn 30. We cannot ruin our plan. You know how much I love you. After everything you did to me, I came so far chasing you to mend things between us." Her last 2 sentences tapped the wrong nerve. I screamed, "Really? This is what you want to talk about? Gaslight the situation, portray me as the bad guy? You're a narcissistic and self-centered woman. You don't care about anyone but yourself and your stupid life goals, getting married before 28, having a baby before 30. At what point are you going to talk about your cheating?" She snapped at this. "That's not cheating. I've never met him after college. I've never cheated on you, not even the first base." And with this came the waterworks. However, that didn't stop me from screaming back at her. Sexting your ex, talking about your sexual fantasy, touching yourself while thinking about him, and then telling him that you want to get drilled by him, all of it comes under cheating. Moreover, you mocked me. You lied to him that I don't go back door. You're a manipulative. The sober version of what I actually said to her. She seemed shocked. She was like, "You can't just make things up. I definitely didn't mean those things. You're blowing stuff out of proportion." You know what I told him was a lie. This shamelessly winked at me and whispered, "It was just for fun, you know? I was just trying to spice things up between us." I yelled, "How? By mocking me?" She tried to justify herself, but she could not. She basically repeated the same stuff, that she didn't mean anything, it was all a lie, that she loved me, and blah blah. I cut her off midway and said I was not interested in any explanation. I have lost all love, respect, and everything for her. It was now that she realized she had seriously screwed up big time. She apologized and pleaded for another chance. Moreover, her request for another chance was on the basis that she never physically cheated on me and that she invested so many years in this relationship so that she could fulfill her life goals, married by 28, baby by 30, and now I cannot spoil it. She's a psycho, I know. She tried to follow me to the resort, but I shooed her away and threatened to report her as a trespasser if she tried to break into my cabin. She slumped onto the ground, breaking down and howling like a wild witch. I didn't even turn back to check if she was okay. I headed back to the resort. I have an early morning flight back home. I've packed my stuff. The staff will drop me off at the airport in the next 2 hours. I don't think I can sleep, but still, I feel relieved and fresh. Maybe the confrontation and the encounter gave me a sense of closure, though I was not seeking it. I guess I can now go back to my home from the motel. I don't think she's ever going to come back. Maybe I'll cancel the lease because the house is too big for a single person. I'll move to a smaller apartment. Maybe I'll continue to journal about my life. It feels good to write down the emotions. Thanks for reading this. Looking forward to staying in touch and contributing to the community. Cheers. Well, she definitely managed to spice things up, but not in the way you would have hoped. And bumping into her in Alaska? What? Seriously? I feel like you need to enter the witness protection program. If she can find you in Alaska, she can find you anywhere. Good luck with that one, OP. What are the lengths you've taken to get away from a stalker ex? Share your stories with us in the comments below. And thank you for joining us today. Be sure to like and subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. Until next time.
John and I tied the knot 22 years ago in the small church in our hometown. Our early years of marriage were filled with love, passion, and dreams of a shared future. We enjoyed our closeness moments at night and couldn't get enough of each other during the day. We used to stroll hand in hand through the charming streets of our town, stealing kisses at every turn. A couple of years later, our daughter Emily was born, and our focus shifted to raising her. Over time, our relationship lost some of its initial excitement and transformed into a typical family routine. John pursued a career as a long-haul truck driver, going on week-long trips across the country, and always looking forward to returning home to my warmth and care. These reunions felt like honeymoons, and this arrangement suited both of us. I started my own small, cozy beauty salon and gradually earned a reputation among local fashion-conscious individuals. As Emily grew up and pursued a prestigious degree in interior design at an out-of-state university, John and I took pride in her determination and hard work. However, during John's most recent visit home, I began to feel irritation and tension in his presence. I found myself annoyed by every little thing about him, from his morning coffee drinking habits to his nightly snoring. I eagerly looked forward to the end of his vacation, yearning for some alone time. 2 days later, John set off on another long-haul trip across multiple states. Without much regret, I bid him farewell and eagerly anticipated 3 weeks of solitude in our cozy house on the outskirts. The prospect of living for myself brought me increasing joy. During the first week, I focused on self-care, sleeping in, reading books by lamplight, and enjoying solitary lunches at my favorite restaurants. I relished the freedom from daily responsibilities and the ability to live solely for my pleasure. However, by the middle of John's journey, I began to feel a sense of boredom and longing for his return. One warm April day, I ventured to take a walk around the town square near our house, but an unexpected chilly wind forced me into a cozy corner cafe for a warm cappuccino. The waiter, a young, tall, and handsome man, turned out to be the son of an old friend, Aaron. We chatted, reminiscing about mutual friends and acquaintances. Later, I placed an order and couldn't help but admire Aaron's professionalism and charm. I found myself captivated by his confidence, broad shoulders, and enchanting smile. His attentive and admiring gaze made me feel incredibly beautiful and desirable. Despite no longer being a young woman, I couldn't get Aaron out of my mind. That night, for the first time in years, I had an enticing erotic dream involving Aaron. The following day, I found it challenging to focus at my salon due to persistent thoughts and fantasies about the young man, Aaron. I frequently checked Aaron's social media profiles and photos. One day, John caught me looking at Aaron's Instagram and became suspicious. We argued, with John feeling that I was hiding something from him. Even on his last trip, John left without a proper goodbye. A few days after he departed, Aaron messaged me on Facebook, confessing his thoughts about me and his desire to meet again. I believed it was fate and eagerly suggested meeting at a cozy Italian restaurant by the waterfront. After dinner and a few glasses of wine, we kissed in the backseat of a taxi, leading to an unforgettable night. I was aware that John would be away on the road for another 3 weeks, so I had no reservations about inviting Aaron to stay with me during that time. On weekends, we ventured on picnics to a scenic valley outside the city, strolled hand in hand in secluded areas of the city park, and watched romantic movies at the cinema, where we shared kisses in the back row. I was excited by the idea of having a passionate affair with a young lover while my husband was off on long trips. However, what truly thrilled me were the passionate nights spent with the energetic 20-year-old in our marital bed. It felt like a rekindling of my youthful, carefree dating days. The deception was unexpectedly unveiled in the most shocking manner. John luckily returned from his trip a couple of days earlier than planned. Remembering our big argument before he left, and the 2 weeks of no communication, he decided to surprise me. Arriving home, John brought a large bouquet of red roses and a bottle of champagne, looking forward to a romantic evening with me after our time apart. Little did he know how this day would take a dreadful turn. As he neared the house, he noticed the dimmed lights in the bedroom and living room, which pleased him as it indicated I was already home. With anticipation, he quietly entered the house using his key. Beautiful, instrumental music played in the living room. Leaving the bouquet and champagne in the kitchen, He cautiously ascended the stairs to the bedroom. The door was partially open, and a horrifying sight met his eyes. I, his beloved wife, whom he had missed for 2 weeks, was without clothes, kneeling before a young man who held me by the hair, with my hands cuffed behind my back. The young man was the first to notice John in the doorway, recoiling in fear. I turned around in confusion. I barely had time to register John's clenched fists before he lunged at my lover in a blind rage, brutally assaulting him with my handcuffs. I could do nothing to intervene but scream and cry, helplessly pleading with my husband to stop the violence. Finally, John, breathing heavily, pulled away from the battered young man. His hands were still clenched as he stared into my eyes, exuding a mix of disgust and a desire to tear me apart. I backed against the wall and tried to explain, but John refused to listen. He moved closer and punched the wall beside me with great force. In that moment, fear consumed me, and I mentally prepared to face dire consequences. However, John managed to keep his composure, not wanting to escalate the situation further. "Get out of here now," he growled, pushing the lovers without clothes out the door despite our protests. His anger was so intense that he didn't care what would become of us in our disheveled state. He didn't know, nor did he want to know, what happened to us afterward. The following day, John filed for divorce at the marriage registration office, and in the evening, he drank at a bar until he passed out. When he woke up the next morning with a severe hangover, he realized that his life was completely shattered, and he had to start anew at the age of 45. It was excruciatingly difficult and painful. He saw me a few times during the divorce and property division process. I begged for forgiveness, cried, and pleaded with him to keep our family intact for the sake of our shared past and our daughter. However, John remained resolute. Later, he learned that I did move in with the young lover, despite objections from his mother and disapproval from friends and acquaintances. Although he told our daughter that he wished us happiness, deep down he still harbored resentment toward us both. He realized our relationship was destined to fail due to our age and life experience differences. In time, the young man would likely find a younger partner, leaving me alone. John decided to move forward and not dwell on the past. He relocated to a different city, found an interesting new job, and met a woman his own age who understood him. While the scars on his soul remained, life carried on.
To unexpectedly find myself in a situation like the one I'm about to describe, where I have to reevaluate the two people I care about the most, is quite surprising. It serves as a reminder that trust can be a complex and unpredictable thing. Sometimes, deceitful people can be among our loved ones, even within our own families. So, let's begin with the fact that I never believed in love at first sight until I met Emily. We worked together at a fast food restaurant, and I was instantly drawn to her striking blue eyes, radiant smile, and long blonde hair. Before Emily came into my life, I was comfortable with the casual dating scene. For a while, I had different girls visiting my place almost every night, and I initially thought that's what I wanted. However, Emily taught me a valuable lesson without even physical contact. From the start, I understood that winning her over wouldn't be easy. Emily resisted my advances because she thought I was like the other guys she'd encountered. I assumed she found me somewhat unpleasant. Despite our brief conversations, which rarely exceeded 5 minutes, I was determined to show her that I was different. I did have some similarities with those guys, but I genuinely wanted to change, so I spent several weeks trying to convince her of my true uniqueness, which meant breaking down the false image I had created before this story unfolds. It's important to note that I hadn't finished college at that time. I had a challenging period in my life when I decided to drop out of school, feeling like the world was against me. This story is familiar to many people who have faced similar challenges. I believed the education system was unjust, especially because I struggled with social anxiety. Unfortunately, by the time I found a therapist to help me, I had already made the decision to leave school. So, I began working at a fast food restaurant, feeling like my parents had lost faith in me. Despite my decision to leave school, my parents supported me by covering therapy costs while I lived in their basement. However, I couldn't escape the shadow of my older brother John, who was a star in their eyes. He had an office job and an economics degree, and he was even getting ready to marry his high school sweetheart. Throughout most of my life, I tried to measure up to his success. Despite my academic setbacks, I relentlessly searched for ways to earn my parents' approval and prove my worth. I became consumed by the idea of surpassing him. In their eyes, it seemed like an impossible task, and I felt like a loser compared to John's accomplishments. This was the most painful part, and every day I spent in the basement, I felt the weight of my family's rejection. It was disheartening to feel like an outcast in a place where unconditional acceptance should have been the norm. Life began to lose its appeal, and simply existing became a struggle. To break down Emily's barriers, I realized I needed to break down my own. I started with small acts of affection, like holding the door open for her and dealing with customers we both disliked. I focused on genuinely listening to her, putting aside my own careless thoughts, and maintaining a respectful and attentive demeanor. Gradually, I noticed her guard began to come down, and she started opening up to me. When I entered a relationship with Emily, it felt like I stepped into a whole new world where I could finally breathe freely. I hadn't even realized how trapped I'd been until she let her walls down, revealing the incredible person she truly was. Every date with her turned into an exciting adventure, meticulously crafted by her creative spirit. We ventured beyond the ordinary, discovering hidden gems in fascinating places. We even took spontaneous trips to nearby cities in Emily's trusty Toyota. One of our favorite pastimes was visiting amusement parks. Despite my paralyzing fear of heights, Emily encouraged me to ride roller coasters, and her presence gave me an unwavering sense of strength. With her, I felt invincible, as she continually reminded me that life was meant to be enjoyed, no matter the obstacles. She saw potential in me, even when I didn't see it myself. When I finally mustered the courage to share my life story with her, I expected laughter or rejection, but her response was entirely unexpected. Despite it being a joking remark, my living situation in my parents' basement and my lack of a high school diploma could have made Emily doubt me as an ideal partner. But that wasn't the case. She empathized with my struggles because she had faced similar challenges with her own parents. They were demanding and overbearing, constantly pressuring her to meet their standards. Instead of caving into that pressure, Emily boldly chose to chart her own path and live life on her terms, even in modest living conditions. In a small apartment near a diner, she made the most of her space, turning it into a cozy haven that felt like ours. Thanks to her influence, I learned to cherish the seemingly insignificant moments that often slip by unnoticed. This was one of the many qualities I admired in her. In her presence, I discovered a safe space where I could be truly authentic, free from the weight of my parents' expectations and the scrutiny of others. So, her betrayal was especially hard to accept. Against my better judgment, I introduced Emily to my parents. The reason behind this decision remained unclear to me, as I had long stopped caring about their opinion. Yet a part of me still yearned for their recognition. Emily was the only source of normalcy and goodness in my life, and I wanted my parents to see that. It happened on that fateful evening when she encountered everyone, including John. At that time, I didn't see any signs of anxiety. I foolishly thought their interaction was purely friendly and polite. After all, his fiancée was there, and I couldn't imagine any hidden motives behind their newfound friendliness. But from that evening onward, I started noticing changes in Emily's behavior. She grew distant, and it seemed like she wasn't putting as much effort into our relationship. Initially, I hesitated to admit this, fearing I might seem overly possessive or paranoid. I convinced myself that these worries were just products of my overactive imagination, or that something was bothering Emily. She had always been my pillar of support, my confidant, who I jokingly called my little therapist, the one I turned to for support. Unfortunately, I was too forgetful to connect the dots. In an attempt to prevent our relationship from falling apart, I tried to be close to her and offer constant support, but my efforts didn't seem to make a difference. Instead of appreciating my presence, Emily started seeing me as overly intrusive and invasive, as if I were prying too deeply into her life. Overnight, Emily stopped engaging in our usual activities like going to the movies or visiting amusement parks. Our conversations dwindled, and I found myself in a state of panic. It felt like I was on the verge of losing the only source of happiness in my life, and that thought was unbearable. Desperate to salvage our relationship, I made an impulsive decision to take on a second job at a local shoe store. I know it might sound feeble, but I genuinely believed that by being able to buy more things for her, I could bring joy back into our relationship. I clung to the hope that my gifts would rekindle the fading spark between us. She accepted them with visible pleasure, but unfortunately, they didn't improve our relationship in any way. No matter how hard I tried, nothing seemed to have a positive impact. In fact, the more I tried to win her back with gifts, gestures, and sacrifices, the quicker her love for me seemed to fade. In an effort to salvage what was left, I decided to surprise Emily by giving her some space, allowing her to breathe without feeling suffocated by my presence. I assumed she would want to see me after this break. There was some improvement in our conversations, which led me to believe that we were gradually repairing our relationship, or so I convinced myself to see a glimmer of hope in Emily's eyes. I saved money for several weeks to buy her the coveted bracelet she wanted, hoping it would be a tangible symbol of my love and dedication. The gift came with a beautiful bouquet of her favorite flowers. I desperately wanted her to understand the depth of my affection and how committed I was to our relationship. Looking back on it now, I can't help but cringe at how pitiful and desperate I appeared as I approached her house. Each step was filled with anticipation, and the mere thought of seeing her again was pure joy. It was excruciating to be away from her, but today I'd finally reunite with her. With a spare key in hand, I carefully entered her house, observing the faint glow of her lamps from beneath the door. However, as soon as I stepped inside, an unexpected sound reached my ears. It was an unusual sound, completely baffling. The source of these mysterious sounds emanated from her living room, distinct from the sounds of the TV. They echoed through the room with a clarity and realism that were almost tangible. They rebounded off the walls, creating a disconcerting atmosphere. Immediately, an anxious feeling gripped me, and my heart raced while a knot formed in my stomach. A wave of uncertainty washed over me, making me ponder whether to proceed or retreat. But curiosity overpowered caution and pushed me to move cautiously toward the source of the noise, trying not to startle her. With each step, the intensity of the sounds increased, sending a sickening feeling through me. When I cautiously peeked around the corner, my world shattered into countless pieces. There, on the very sofa where we had spent countless nights together, I saw a sight that tore my heart apart. Emily, the love of my life, was locked in an embrace with none other than my own brother. I froze in place as if time had stopped, struggling to grasp the betrayal unfolding before my eyes. My mind raced, desperately searching for some explanation for this nightmare. However, no reasoning could account for the depth of pain and betrayal I felt at that moment. It seemed that Emily's betrayal not only shattered our relationship, but also shattered my very core. In a shocking act of betrayal, my own brother John not only betrayed me, but also secretly started a relationship with my girlfriend, Emily. The pain I felt at that moment is beyond words, as if the very foundation of my world crumbled in an instant. Emily, whom I once considered the love and inspiration of my life, has now become the cause of my emotional devastation. As the room spun around me, the initial shock gradually gave way to an overwhelming surge of anger coursing through my veins. Feeling the weight of my emotions, I knew I had to get out of this toxic situation before doing something I'd regret. I quietly left this painful scene, and an unbearable pain pierced my heart. How could both John and Emily betray me like this? While I always had a strained relationship with John, the fact that he had an affair with my girlfriend was a cruel blow. It felt like he was meant to succeed in every aspect of life, while I was always left on the sidelines. And Emily? Despite everything that once connected us, my love for her had now turned into intense, consuming hatred that I couldn't control. When my relationship with John was completely shattered, I was consumed by anger. In the following days, I gave Emily what she seemed to want most: distance. Fueled by rage, I took a few days off under the pretext of being sick and retreated to the basement. In my isolation, impulsive thoughts began to flood my mind, threatening to override my common sense. The desire to call John's wife and reveal the truth burned within me. But deep down, I knew that wouldn't be enough. It wouldn't satisfy the insatiable thirst for retribution that had taken hold of me. Then, a sudden realization hit me like a lightning bolt. It became clear that I needed to ensure they faced the consequences for their actions directly. With this newfound determination, I arranged another family dinner, disguising it as an important announcement about significant changes in my life. The evening seemed normal, with our parents present. But then, my seemingly perfect brother and his unsuspecting bride joined us. His appearance, as if everything were normal, and his attempts to strike up a conversation with me fueled my endless anger. His calm demeanor, as if his affair with my girlfriend meant nothing, infuriated me. I bided my time, waiting for everyone to sit down and enjoy the meal before making my move. However, just as I was about to speak, Emily intervened in the conversation. I couldn't help but notice her subtle hints, the change in her tone, the way she laughed at his jokes, and the wide smiles she directed exclusively at him. It was unbearable. Desperate for attention, I seized the moment, pretending I was finally ready to share my long-awaited news. The audience fell into an expectant silence, eagerly awaiting my words. As all eyes turned to me, I stood up with a glass of wine in my hand. Carefully calculated, I turned to my brother, putting on a facade of admiration, and began showering him with praise, highlighting his achievements and expressing deep pride in his relentless pursuit of his desires. He absorbed every word, relishing the attention. Deep down, it hurt to see his smug grin, as if his superiority remained intact despite my deliberate efforts to elevate him with compliments. Glancing at Emily, I noticed a distinct spark in her eyes when she looked at my brother. It was a mesmerizing look, as if he embodied everything she had ever wanted and more. I clung to the glass, threatening to shatter it under the pressure of anger, but I couldn't let go. A surge of rage surged through my veins, urging me to finish my speech quickly. With a forced smile, I raised my glass, congratulating my brother on his illicit affair with my girlfriend. A tense silence filled the room, and all eyes turned to the guilty couple. I felt an adrenaline rush. My heart pounded, my hands grew sweaty, but I held my composure and took a sip of raspberry wine. Except for Emily and John, everyone in the room wore expressions of surprise and disbelief. They looked like deer caught in headlights. Despite my mother's insistence for me to sit down, I remained firm, determined to share every detail of the events I'd witnessed. I felt that if I had witnessed it, they deserved to hear about it. And so I began my account. I spoke at length about where I found them and the compromising position they were in. Despite my parents' pleas for me to sit down, my gaze never left Emily's teary eyes. I couldn't help but think, how dare she shed tears now after the terrible act she had committed? She had the audacity to sit and pretend to be innocent. John tried to intervene, grabbing my arm and attempting to lead me to a chair, but I quickly pushed him away. I couldn't hold back my words. I needed to express everything that was boiling inside me. As a result, the emotions on the faces of those present ranged from bewilderment to anger. Emily and John exchanged guilty glances, unable to meet anyone's eyes. I remember letting out a bitter, ironic laugh meant solely for their benefit, and then I sank back into my seat, allowing the scene to unfold in front of me like a cinematic spectacle. I had shattered their pristine facade. My parents, who had always viewed my brother as the embodiment of perfection, looked at him with a mix of confusion and disappointment. I relished the moment, reveling in the truth revealed to them. They couldn't summon the courage to deny it. For a brief moment, I forgot about John's fiancée, but she quickly grabbed her glass and hurled it at my brother, causing me to burst into laughter as the wine cascaded down his face. Enraged, she stormed out of the room, tossing her engagement ring at him. My parents, who had always valued honesty and could never have imagined that their beloved son would turn out to be such a despicable person, were left dumbfounded. They chastised him for his complete lack of respect. There was shame and disappointment in their voices, sending a shiver down my spine. Emily, too, couldn't escape their attention. Their gazes turned to her, and they sternly ordered her to leave their house immediately. I didn't look in her direction. I had reached my limit in communicating with her. Even when she tried to apologize to all of us for the horror they had caused, her words entered one ear and quickly exited the other, having no effect. Truth be told, a part of my heart left with her as she walked out the door. When all was said and done, at that moment, I felt like I had hit rock bottom. The consequences were unavoidable. While my parents acknowledged my pain, they disapproved of how I handled the situation. They believed that my brother's fiancée deserved to learn the truth in a more respectful way, and, for the most part, I agreed with them. I must admit, I was somewhat self-centered in that moment, but given the immense pain and profound loss I felt, it was nearly impossible for me to consider anyone else's perspective. As we retired to our bedrooms that evening, a heavy cloud of tension hung over the house. John's worst fears had come to pass. My parents regarded him with a mix of disdain and indifference, and eventually, despite the passage of time, they made the difficult decision to kick him out of our home. It became evident that this situation meant much more to our parents than we initially assumed. I suspect it was fueled by deep affection for his ex-fiancée. He humbled himself to the point of pleading for a change of heart, but they remained resolute in their decision. I couldn't help but sympathize with him, seeing how even his ex-fiancée rejected him and denied him the chance to explain himself. He was left to deal with this on his own. Speaking of his ex-fiancée, she shamelessly exposed him on social media, and many members of our community joined in the public condemnation. John, at one point, became a symbol of shame, the embodiment of dishonor in our town. As for Emily, from what I've heard, her life spiraled into turmoil. She left the fast food restaurant but maintained contact with one of her friends, who happened to be a co-worker of ours. This friend confided in me, revealing that Emily was facing eviction due to substantial rent arrears, and the landlord took her to court. Living in a noisy trailer park, I made a firm decision to seek the same happiness that Emily once brought into my life, but this time I was determined to find it within myself. It may sound sentimental, but I embarked on a profound journey of self-discovery, during which I realized that I deserved more than what others could offer. That's how I reclaimed my destiny. By a stroke of luck, I landed a job that not only paid better but also offered me a chance to break free from my current life situation. When I truly tasted independence for the first time, everything else faded into the background. Here's a lesson I've learned along the way. Never blame yourself for falling in love, and don't ignore warning signs. Most importantly, don't shoulder the blame for someone else's infidelity. If you know you've given your all, it reflects their character, not yours. Take this experience as a lesson and stay vigilant, even when it comes to your own family. You never truly know someone's intentions. As she lay on her modest, inflatable mattress, amid fits of laughter, she confessed her simple desires to me. She didn't aspire to anything extravagant or complicated in life. Her dream was to become a kindergarten teacher, and when she saved enough money, she planned to further her education. It was she who unexpectedly brought up the topic of a date, and I could hardly believe the reality of the moment. Naturally, I accepted her offer, but it was hard for me to fathom that my efforts had been noticed and appreciated. It might sound silly, but in that moment, my 21-year-old self was filled with skepticism. This experience prompted me to adopt a completely new persona, a kind of shield to protect myself from potential rejection or the disappointed looks that sometimes met me. I made a firm decision to stop fixating on John and the image he represented. Choosing to liberate myself from their influence, I boldly decided to distance myself entirely. Getting a job was my first step toward freedom, but it was meeting my new friend that truly illuminated my path and opened up a fresh perspective on life.
Social media exploded in popularity in the early 2000s, drawing users in droves. Across various platforms, the number of accounts quickly grew from millions to billions, yet the authenticity of many of these profiles remained uncertain. Despite their popularity, these platforms held no appeal for some of us. We just weren't tempted to check them out. However, my teenage daughter, Evelyn, was eager to get involved, and right after she turned 13, my wife, Sarah, allowed her to sign up. I had my reservations about it, but I trusted Sarah's judgment. She was a fantastic mom and usually made wise decisions. A few weeks later, during one of our dinners, Evelyn wondered if Sarah and I might be interested in joining too. "Sure, that sounds great," Sarah agreed cheerfully. "No thanks, I'll pass," I said, hoping that would close the topic. Yet Evelyn persisted, eager to convince us. "It's really fun, Dad. You get to see what your friends are up to, and there are all kinds of games you can play." "Sweetie, I already catch up with my friends face-to-face or over the phone. I don't need a website for that. Plus, we have plenty of games around here if I want to play," I countered. "But Dad, what about Aunt Linda? When did you last talk to her?" "Oh," I said, pausing, trying to recall when exactly. "I think it was a couple of weeks ago. Did you hear she got a new car? About 6 weeks back? It's red and looks really cool. Beth, her cousin, will be getting Aunt Linda's old car when she gets her license in a few months. You're friends with Aunt Linda on there? And she got a new car? I was a bit surprised. I thought her old one wasn't that old. Sarah nodded, smirking at my surprise and expression, though part of my reaction was due to the unsettling thought of my niece driving on actual roads instead of just around their church parking lot. Yeah, Evelyn replied, looking at me like I was crazy for not knowing. Told you should join. Sarah and I discussed it that night. I suppose I shouldn't have been too surprised when Sarah took Evelyn's side, especially since she had already given our daughter permission to join and had set up her own account. Sarah said to me, she might be right. It could be a good way to stay connected with our relatives and some of our old high school and college friends. I'm not sure I'd want to stay in touch with a lot of them, I grumbled. I already kept up with my close male friends. The situation with girls was quite different. In high school, most either treated me badly or viewed me as a younger, immature brother. College was no different. The vast majority of co-eds ignored me outright. However, there were exceptions in such a large environment, especially as I progressed through my education. I made several female friends during college and even had a couple of girlfriends during my junior and senior years. That's why we decided to give social media a shot, though my main reason was secretly to monitor Evelyn's online activities closely. I had heard about dangers for young girls online, so I was determined to protect my daughter from them. I kept a close watch on Evelyn's account and was relieved to see that she displayed the level-headedness we had instilled in her. As my concerns eased, I also used the platform to reconnect with old friends. However, I made sure to avoid any interactions with former lovers to prevent upsetting my wife. There weren't many former lovers anyway. Besides a couple of chance encounters, they were all ex-girlfriends, except for one young lady from the building next door during my grad school days. Nowadays, she might be considered a friend with benefits, as we would hang out, drink wine, and occasionally get intimate. I figured it was okay to reminisce about old crushes as long as neither they nor Sarah knew about my previous feelings. I eventually reconnected with Maria, one of the few female friends I had from freshman and sophomore years. She was a close friend and also an unconscious crush of mine, but I made sure to keep our relationship strictly platonic. Based on past experiences, I knew trying to turn it romantic could ruin our friendship forever. So she inadvertently tugged at my heartstrings over time without realizing it. By the latter part of junior year, we naturally drifted apart as I began dating other girls more successfully. I didn't notice Maria's gradual distance until it was too late. Feeling we had never crossed any boundaries, I reached out to her as mature adults, sending a friendly note and a friend request, and eagerly awaited her response. When her reply came a few days later, I was taken aback. Tom Jarrett, I'm sorry, but I don't recall ever knowing anyone by that name. You must have mistaken me for someone else. Knowing Maria's sense of humor from college, I initially thought she was joking. Nice one, Maria. You almost had me there. How have you been? But when I checked my computer next, her response was clear. I'm serious. I really don't remember you. You must have the wrong person. That was a blow. We didn't hang out much in our senior year, but we shared a few classes freshman and sophomore years before she changed majors. Maybe she just wasn't reminiscing about our time together, so I tried to jog her memory. Remember the Delta Lamb party with Mark and Christy? You sprained your ankle and I carried you piggyback to your dorm. We iced your ankle and you promised me a back massage once you felt better. By the way, I never got to collect on that. A week later, she replied, Sorry, you've mistaken me for someone else. I've never injured my ankle like that, and I wouldn't promise a back massage to anyone except a very close boyfriend. Please don't contact me again. That stung more than it should have. I mulled it over and decided that since she sent a final message, I deserved one too. I made it clear that it would be my last message and I wouldn't bother her again. After carefully crafting my response, I sent it. Dear Maria, it's probably better that you don't remember me and that we won't reconnect. Truthfully, it would likely go against the agreement I have with my wife about avoiding past connections. Even though you were unaware of the crush I had on you, I remember it well. It would feel dishonest to my wife if she were to inquire about our friendship. Perhaps you're aware of this, which might explain your hesitation to say hello. Either way, I understand and won't reach out again. I sincerely wish you a lifetime of happiness and good health. Yours from afar, Tom. I included a photo from my college album showing us with friends at a party during our sophomore year. Despite any denials, it was undeniable proof of our past connection. After sending that final message, Maria never replied, and I kept my promise not to contact her again. I returned the photo album to the basement and resolved to be more cautious about reconnecting with anyone Sarah might object to. Despite my efforts, Sarah reconnected with an ex-lover during a business trip to Chicago, which led to the end of our marriage. The trust we had built over 17 years was shattered. Evelyn was heartbroken, but eventually accepted the situation, dividing her time between Sarah and me. It was heartening to see her grow into a smart, beautiful young woman with promising opportunities. While Evelyn primarily lived with Sarah, I gradually recovered from the shock of Sarah's infidelity. I sought a more mature approach to life and had a few girlfriends over the years, but realized that commitment was more suited to cling wrap than to relationships seeking a fresh start. About 7 years later, hello? Hey Tom, it's Andy Reiner. How are you? Hi Andy, good to hear from you. I'm doing well. How about yourself? Andy and I hadn't kept in touch much lately, but we exchanged cards and occasional notes during Christmas to catch up. Never been better, my friend. Say, have you heard about our upcoming class reunion? 25 years, can you believe it? Gloria and I are thinking about going, but we want to see if any of our old buddies will be there. We don't want to end up at a table alone with strangers if none of our closer friends show up. You know how it goes? Yeah, I skipped our 20-year reunion for that exact reason, I confessed, although that wasn't the only reason. It was shortly after my divorce was finalized, and I wasn't keen on discussing it if I bumped into friends, let alone strangers. Do you know who's confirmed to attend? Well, right now, besides Gloria and me, we've got confirmations from Mark Savone, Keith, and Gabby Schilling. He listed off about 10 or 12 people I was close with, including Mark, my best friend and best man, and 3 couples. Some were definite attendees, while others were still deciding. That was enough for me to make a decision by the time he finished. Sounds like a great group, and I'm excited to catch up with everyone. Count me in as a yes. I'll go register right after we finish our call. The reunion is in October during homecoming, so we've got 3 months to go. Gloria and I are really looking forward to seeing you there. Please give her my regards, my friend. Talk to you again soon. 20 minutes later, I had registered to attend, signed up for some of the special activities, and got tickets for the homecoming game against the Cats. Later that evening, I weighed myself and set a goal to shed 10 pounds before the reunion. Even though I'd still be about 15 pounds above my college weight, I figured it would make me look pretty good. Reunion weekend finally arrived with 10 of us committed to attending. Mark and I were the only ones who were single, although Mark had never been married. Larry and Nina were both on their second marriages after divorcing their first spouses shortly after tying the knot. Keith and Gabby had married right after graduation, setting an example for those of us still in our first and only marriages, which made me feel somewhat down considering my own plans. On Friday, there were several activities planned, so I flew in on Thursday afternoon. A few of us gathered for dinner that evening and later had drinks at the hotel bar. Mark and I had been roommates during our sophomore year and remained close friends, so we spent the evening together chatting with our group and others who came and went throughout the night. The next day, Friday, we attended campus tours and seminars with some of our couple friends. The campus had changed considerably with new buildings and artwork, yet in many ways it still retained its charm, with young students socializing on the plaza and others rushing to class. I remember those days, remarked Mark, talking to girls until the last minute and then racing to class. Yeah, they'd chat you up, I chuckled. Did you see the note in the reunion brochure about the pizza joint near campus? It's still there, but it's under new management. I wonder if they've redecorated. Redecorated? I'm more curious if the pizza still tastes the same. We texted our group and met at the pizza place for slices and beer. The lobby displayed photos of past and recent visitors, including athletes and celebrities. Unfortunately, half the reunion attendees had the same idea, resulting in a long wait. This allowed us to chat and unwind. Josh and Stephanie shared stories of their European tour after selling their company, while Gloria discussed her upcoming book. Mark excused himself when he spotted Jane Mealer, his old crush from freshman and sophomore years. They finally hit it off nearly 30 years later. After decent pizza, I attended afternoon activities alone. Mark and Jane were absent from dinner, making me smile at the thought of their reconnection. We enjoyed a nice meal and conversation, briefly paying attention to class leaders' speeches. They welcomed us, acknowledged guests, made fundraising appeals, and reflected on our class. By the second or third plea for funds, most of us tuned out, and the speakers eventually wrapped up, allowing the music to begin. I mingled around the ballroom, catching up with old friends. I danced with Gabby, who was tired after dancing with Keith, and then with Nina and Stephanie. Later, Gloria joined me on the dance floor, prompting Andy to jokingly send her my way. A slow dance began, and as I was about to escort Gloria back, she suggested we waltz with some space between us. While dancing, she asked how I was doing, mentioning that she and Andy had been concerned about me and wanted to ensure I was all right. I appreciated my friend's care, but honestly, answering truthfully was a bit disheartening. So I escorted Gloria back to our table, thanked her and Andy, then headed to the bar for a drink. Standing in line, I glanced across the dance floor behind me and spotted Maria making her way towards the line. My heart raced more than it should have for someone who had been a crush nearly 28 or 29 years earlier. But she was still as lovely as ever, albeit visibly older. When she saw me, I waved, and she smiled and waved back before her expression turned serious. Approaching her, I greeted, "Hi, Maria, remember me?" She looked down for a moment before meeting my gaze and nodding. "Hi, Tom. Of course I remember you," she replied, opening her arms for a hug. Not wanting to miss the chance, I embraced my old friend for the first time in years. She felt comforting in my arms, and I rested my head against hers, taking in the scent of her hair. We held each other for several seconds before she squeezed tighter briefly and then relaxed. Taking the cue, I released the hug in return. "How have you been?" I asked. She glanced around before turning back to me. "Tom, can we get a drink and find somewhere private to talk?" We grabbed our drinks and wandered into the lobby, finding an empty sofa where we could sit and chat. "Is this all right?" "Sure, this works," she said with a smile. "It's so noisy in there that it's hard to gather my thoughts, and Tom, I owe you an apology and an explanation. That whole wrong person act you pulled, was that about 7 or 8 years ago?" She nodded. "I'm really sorry, Tom. I was so excited when I received your first message that I started typing right away. But as soon as I finished typing your name," she chuckled softly. "I only got as far as 3 letters, T-O-M, before I realized the implications if my incredibly jealous husband found out. Delete, delete, delete. It hurt each time, and my heart ached continuously over the next couple of days until I finally replied saying you had the wrong person. That hurt even more. I'm sorry, Maria, and I'm sorry I kept pushing." I sighed. "Actually, later on, I wondered if you truly remembered, but didn't want to reconnect because of your marriage. I would have understood and let it go. I should have just admitted it, Tom, and said we couldn't be friends at that time, but I needed— what's that term? Plausible deniability? Yes, exactly. Plausible deniability in case Vince found out. We were going through a rough patch back then. Are things better between you two now?" She took a deep breath and shook her head slowly. "There's nothing between us now. We divorced 3 years ago, after our son started college. It's like we live in separate worlds. We hardly speak unless it's about something happening in Vinny's life. If he ever gets married, they might have to have 2 ceremonies, so Vince and I can each attend one." Ouch, I'm sorry to hear that. Sarah and I don't communicate much these days either, but we still try to present a united front when it comes to Evelyn. She's a junior in college this year and is planning to pursue a career as a veterinarian. Maria, what's the matter? Tom, do you ever think about, what could have been? Yeah, sometimes, but I try not to dwell too much on missed opportunities that never materialized. Why do you ask? What's on your mind? Do you remember when you sent me that last note where you mentioned you had a big crush on me? Tom, usually girls pick up on some sort of hint in those situations, some sign, but I never got anything like that from you, no hints at all. Or maybe I was just oblivious because we were such good friends. Anyway, I've often wondered what it might have been like if we had taken a chance and gotten together, even just for one night. Maria, you were a dear friend, and I wanted to keep it that way. I hate to admit it, but I still had some growing up to do back then. Yes, I had a big crush on you, but I had what you might call a wide range of crushes during freshman and sophomore years when we were close friends. I usually had crushes on several girls at once before starting to figure things out later in college, including the realization that it's not wise to have more than one crush at a time. However, during those first 2 years, it was rare that any of those crushes led anywhere. I chuckled, recalling some of the disasters. On the rare occasions when they did, it usually didn't end well. So instead of risking our friendship, I tried to conceal my silly crush on you. Sometimes I admitted it to one of the other girls as a cover, just to keep you in what today's youth might call the friend zone. Maria laughed. Tom, I think that term is well established, and maybe even outdated now. We both chuckled, but I wanted to steer the conversation forward. Maria, it doesn't matter anymore. If we're talking old expressions, it's like water under the bridge far downstream by now. Maria looked deeply into my eyes before slowly shaking her head. No, Tom, it's not irrelevant, and yes, it does matter. Take me upstairs to my room, or yours, and let's explore something new together. I've spent 7 years, or however long, wondering. Now I don't have to wonder anymore. She didn't need to ask again. I took her hand and we headed straight to the elevator. As soon as the doors closed, we were close together, her hands clutching my jacket to ensure I wasn't slipping away, and mine cradling her face, savoring her softness and the passion with which she kissed me. She kicked off her heels before we exited the elevator, and we practically dashed down the hallway to my room, giggling all the way. There, I locked the door behind us, and our kissing continued fervently. "Oh, Tom, why didn't we do this back then?" she whispered. "Why was I so blind as to not see it? And why were you so afraid to tell me? Seriously, we wasted years that we could have been together," she said. "Shh, don't say that, Maria. We had lives to lead, children to raise. But it's not too late to start now." We spent Saturday morning in bed, then grabbed brunch and headed to the game. Our tickets were in the same section, and we managed to sit together. The game was intense, with our team winning by 4 points in a thrilling finish. As underdogs, the stadium erupted in celebration. Maria and I went to our rooms to change for dinner. When I knocked on her door, she pulled me inside, and we almost missed our reservation due to making out. Mark and Jane noticed our smiles at dinner, mirroring their own. After dinner, we joined friends at the class party. We mingled and danced until Maria gave me a certain look. We left shortly after and returned to her room. That night, our lovemaking was even more passionate and confident. Despite living far apart, me in Dallas, Maria near NYC, we decided to keep our relationship steady but casual. Maria insisted we avoid making it official due to the distance, though I hoped for more. Over the next few months, we stayed connected, talking weekly and texting daily, seeing each other about once a month. To keep our relationship private from my daughter, Evelyn, and her ex, Vinny, we met in neutral places, exploring and relaxing in hotels with great room service and comfortable beds, where we spent most of our time together. However, things didn't quite go as we had planned. As our relationship progressed, my feelings for Maria grew stronger, and before long, I found myself falling in love with her, just as I had suspected might happen. We had agreed earlier not to rush into declaring our love, so I held back, contemplating how I could align my life and career to be with her full-time. While I wasn't enthusiastic about living in New Jersey or New York City, I was increasingly open to the idea of making sacrifices to spend my life with Maria. I was even willing to consider moving to a neutral city if she wasn't keen on relocating to Dallas with me. In May, we met up in Charleston for a weekend getaway. My flight had been delayed on Friday, and with our time together starting with a romantic Friday evening and Saturday morning in the hotel, we hadn't even ventured out to explore the city. As we lounged in the hotel room, I pulled out my laptop to look up local attractions I had bookmarked, hoping to entice Maria to venture out with me. Since it was a week before her birthday weekend, I had also secretly arranged a spa trip for her on Saturday afternoon, hoping to surprise her with a special treat. Maybe she'll have other ideas, I murmured to myself, considering different ways to spend the day together. Suddenly, a phone rang, seemingly from within our room. It wasn't my phone or Maria's, so I searched around the room trying to locate it. The ringing stopped before I could find it. I kept searching, but the sound had been faint and muffled, making it hard to pinpoint. Just as I was about to give up, the ringing started again. This time, I was determined to track it down, realizing it must have fallen behind or inside the dresser, possibly wedged behind a drawer. I continued searching and found the phone hidden in one of the drawers beneath Maria's clothes. It didn't belong to Maria, so I picked it up, curious about who had left it and how Maria hadn't noticed it when she packed her clothes. She hadn't brought much since we were leaving the next day. Since the phone had stopped ringing, I decided to take it to the front desk. Maybe they could locate the owner once I confirmed with Maria that it wasn't her work phone. I set it aside and returned to my laptop, but a series of notification sounds drew me back to the phone. I couldn't unlock it, but I saw some partial text messages on the screen, and another message popped up as I tried to make sense of them. V, WTF are you? You're not at your sister's. Had to trick it out of her, but Trudy says you haven't. Trudy? That was Maria's sister's name, though we hadn't met. Maria had mentioned her a couple of times. You better be home when I get there or so. Call me now. A little later, I was still sitting on the edge of the bed, feeling deflated, when Maria walked in, practically dancing with joy. "Oh, Tom, thank you so much. That was amazing. Tom, what's the matter?" She seemed shocked, as if I had a stroke or something. But when I held up the phone for her to see, her face drained of color and she looked crushed. "The phone kept ringing, Maria, and ringing. Did you forget to turn it off?" She shook her head vigorously, tears streaming down her face. "No, God, no." "What game are you playing, Maria? Letting me fall for you while you're with someone else? Another lover? A husband? That's it, isn't it? God, Maria, how could you? If you're still married, we can't be together." "Tom, no, it's not what you think." "Really? So it's not your husband? The one you said you divorced? Or maybe you didn't? Or did you remarry and forget to tell me about that?" She tried to hug me, to pull me into her arms like she had before with her lies. I stepped away, not wanting her touch. "Oh, damn it, Tom. Please. It is Vince, but it's not what you think." "Oh, really?" I said incredulously. "So all this time I've been falling for you, it hasn't been a complete lie?" I grumbled, trying to keep my voice steady. "And we're not cheaters, the scum of the earth like Sarah and her friend? Please tell me that's not true, because right now, that's how it looks to me and it's making me sick. I'm struggling to keep my lunch down, and if I manage that, I'm seriously considering walking out that door and never looking back." "Tom, please, let me explain, please." "Fine, but only because I cared about you, Maria. Or at least I thought I did. Now I'm not so sure, but go ahead, I'm listening. No more lies." She sat back on the bed, her hands clasped together tightly as if trying to wash away the guilt. Tears still streamed down her face, but at least she met my gaze as she spoke. "Tom, I'm so sorry, but this is the truth. The awful truth. Vince and I had been struggling for a long time when you contacted me almost 8 years ago. We were still together, mostly for Vinny, our son. I was in therapy trying to save our marriage, but he wasn't interested and it wasn't helping. Eventually, things got so bad that I realized I had to leave him. I consulted a lawyer and started the divorce process, but Vince brought up the prenup I signed 17 years ago and threatened to enforce it to the letter. I'd end up with next to nothing. Sure, there would be some money, but nowhere near what I was used to. So you're a gold digger too? No, not like that. You see, Vince had a strict prenup, and he had Rafael Bonadus, one of the top divorce lawyers in the state. You know, those lawyers for rich people and celebrities who want to protect their wealth? I had some young lawyer fresh out of law school who was so inexperienced and scared that she probably panicked the first time she met Mr. Bonadus. When we negotiated what I'd get in the divorce, I would have ended up with next to nothing. Vince would have been laughing all the way to the bank, and Mr. Bonadus was probably messing around with my young lawyer. Actually, given his reputation, I wouldn't be surprised if he was, even after our case was over. "A damn gold digger," I repeated, convinced by her explanation. "And it sounds like your lawyer was one too. Well, they say birds of a feather flock together." "No! Vincent DePrimo is big in his family business. Car dealerships, rentals, insurance, real estate, you name it. Divorce doesn't look good to them. He agreed to let me have some freedom as long as I'm discreet about it and provide him with plausible deniability, and that I'm there to take care of his needs whenever he wants. I've been telling him I'm visiting my sister Trudy or going to a conference or something. While I'm away, it gives him the freedom to do, well, whatever he wants for the weekend, but I guess something came up this time. Yeah, probably his libido. Needed some attention, I'm guessing." She winced, her expression confirming it was likely true, and I swallowed hard to keep from throwing up right there. "I'm really sorry, Tom. I still want to divorce him, but I just haven't had the resources or the backup plan I need to do it. I wanted to tell you, but I was afraid of how you'd react." My stomach settled, if only briefly, and I let out a frustrated sigh. "Maria, you knew how I felt, and that I'd react like this. Yet you kept it from me? What were you thinking? If you had been honest from the beginning, maybe we could have faced this together and figured something out. Now, I don't know. I'm so torn. I love you, and I'm furious with you at the same damn time. I've got to go. Tom, please stay tonight. Let's talk this through. Please." "Maria, I'm sorry, but as long as you're married, there's nothing to discuss. And honestly, even if you divorce him and come back to me, I don't know if there'll be anything left to say. I thought you were not just my lover, but my best friend too. But now you've shown me you're a cheater and a liar, and I don't know you like I thought I did. And I don't know if I can ever trust you again. No, I'm sorry, Maria, but I need to leave and think about all of this." She cried and begged as I packed, making grand promises if I'd stay, but I knew I couldn't be manipulated. whether by love or lust. Within 5 minutes, I had my things packed and was walking out the door, trying to block out her tears and pleas. My heart felt like it had a giant hole in it as I flew back home, and that feeling lingered in the days that followed. When Maria and I reunited at the reunion, after so many years, I knew there was a risk of falling in love with her right from the start. Even though I tried to be cautious and avoid it, especially given the distance between us, it was inevitable after spending that intense weekend together. I tried not to let myself love her, but I couldn't stop it. Yes, I came to love her deeply, and I still do, but now my world was in turmoil, engulfed in a blaze she had ignited. It tore at my heart for her, and it threatened to shatter the person I thought I was. I sighed heavily, unsure of what steps to take next and how to navigate the situation with integrity, dignity, and love, assuming any of those were still possible. Realizing we had already crossed the line into adultery, any hope of maintaining honor and dignity seemed lost. As for love, despite everything, I wanted to continue loving her, but I questioned whether I could, even if she wanted me to. I was filled with anger towards her and anxiety about where we might go from here if she chose to divorce her husband. If not, I feared I might never see her again. It took me a week of pouring my raw emotions into carefully crafted words on the screen of my computer. I edited and re-edited my thoughts until I felt they were coherent enough to send. In the email, I expressed that she should reach out if she decided to pursue divorce or if she chose to remain with her husband. If neither happened, I promised to contact her again in a few weeks. It wasn't explicitly stated that it might be our last communication, but if Maria couldn't read between the lines, maybe she wasn't as perceptive as I thought. Over the next few weeks, my job consumed me, not because it had to, but because it offered a distraction from the turmoil I felt over Maria and the guilt of compromising my moral compass. That changed one weekend in June when Evelyn came to visit. "Dad, I've missed you," Evelyn said as soon as she arrived. "You've seemed so distant lately. Even when we talk on the phone, it feels like your mind is elsewhere. What's been going on?" She hit the nail on the head. I hadn't intentionally neglected her, but the personal challenges I was facing had definitely affected my focus on her needs. "Sweetheart, your mom and I always tried to instill in you the importance of doing the right thing," I began cautiously. "But I have to admit, I recently made a mistake. I did something that wasn't right, and it may have hurt someone else." Evelyn nodded knowingly. "Dad, I'm 21 now. Remember last year when I was torn between two guys? Mom told me about her own mistake with you. You both shielded me from the truth back then, but Mom said I needed to hear it now so I could learn from her failure. Yes, that's exactly what she called it. And avoid making similar mistakes in my life. It was a tough lesson, but I made the right choice. You wouldn't deny me that opportunity to learn from your mistakes too, would you?" I glanced at Evelyn, grateful that she had grown into such a thoughtful young woman, even if her curiosity sometimes got the best of her. She placed her hand on mine and asked gently, "What's going on, Dad?" I hadn't planned on revealing my mistake to anyone, especially not to my daughter, but I realized it could be a valuable life lesson for her, reinforcing what her mom had already taught her and possibly guiding her in the future. Taking a deep breath, I decided to open up. I reconnected with an old friend and we ended up falling in love over a few months. Just when I was thinking about making things more serious, I discovered she wasn't actually divorced like she had told me. Ouch! So she lied to you and cheated on her husband? And now you're feeling guilty about it, even though you didn't know? Evelyn's quick understanding and insight didn't surprise me. She was on track to graduate with top honors next year, after all. "Yeah, that's about right. She claims her husband isn't exactly a saint either, but two wrongs don't make a right," Evelyn finished my thought, showing that she remembered the moral lessons we had taught her from a young age. "Dad, what matters is that it wasn't intentional, and you stopped as soon as you found out, right?" "Yeah, but I'm not sure where things go from here," I admitted, feeling uncertain about the future. "Well, that's what you should focus on. Moving forward, not dwelling on the past," Evelyn advised wisely. Smart kid, indeed. I smiled at her, appreciating her maturity and understanding. A few days later, Sarah called me out of the blue. "Is Evelyn all right?" I asked, concerned by the timing of her call. "Yeah, she's fine, Tom, but she seemed worried about you. She didn't give me any details, but I just wanted to check in and make sure everything's okay." "Sarah, I'm all right. It's nothing serious." I should have stopped there and thanked her for reaching out, but our long history of sharing made me continue. "I made a mistake recently, and it's been tough dealing with the consequences. I'm sorry to hear that. Do you want to talk about it? No, not really, I hesitated. Well, maybe. Can I ask you something personal? She chuckled. We've asked each other plenty of personal questions over the years. It's a first for you to ask if you can ask. Shoot. When you had your affair, did you ever feel guilty? Wow, that's really personal and unexpected. I'm sorry, you don't have to answer that. I'll catch up with you later, okay? Wait, Tom, I actually want to answer that. I was grown up enough to understand that what I was doing was wrong. I knew it could hurt you and damage our relationship if it came out, but the temptation was strong, and the first time I wasn't strong enough to resist. After I crossed that line I never intended to cross, it didn't make me braver, but maybe it emboldened me to keep going. I knew it was wrong, and yes, I felt guilty and dirty afterward. But there was also an extra thrill that made me think I could get away with it until I got caught. When it finally happened, it was a relief in some ways, but facing the consequences was much harder than I ever imagined. I've been paying for that mistake ever since and regretting it every day. I'm truly sorry, Tom, for what I did to you and to our relationship. I regret the trust I broke. Thank you, Sarah, for being honest with me. I appreciate it, even now. What's going on, Tom? Why are you bringing this up now? You're not married, but wait, are you involved with someone who is... I was seeing someone and we were getting serious, but then I found out the truth and realized I was involved in adultery too, even though I didn't choose it. Tom, don't blame yourself if you didn't know. I made a terrible choice looking back on it now. But if you were unaware that she was married, you can't hold yourself responsible for something you didn't know. Yeah, I keep trying to tell myself that. It's been tough. Don't let it eat you up, Tom. Just remember, now that you know, you're accountable for the choices you make moving forward. It might feel challenging, but I've known you a long time, honey, and I believe you'll make the right decisions. The days went by with no word from Maria, so I began drafting a message, a farewell that would express my feelings. It felt like those scenes in old movies where the protagonist crumples up note after note into a wastebasket. Except in my case, the digital recycle bin on my computer would have been overflowing with discarded drafts, were it not for the ease of editing on screen. One evening, I was deeply engrossed in yet another revision after work when the doorbell suddenly rang. Peering through the door's peephole, I saw a sharply dressed man accompanied by two burly men in ill-fitting suits on the sidewalk. They reminded me of an oversized version of the old Bobbsey twins, a strange thought given the circumstances. I cracked the door open and asked cautiously, "Can I help you?" "Mr. Jarrett, I'm Vincent DePrimo. We've never met, but you know my wife, Maria, quite intimately, I understand. We need to talk. May I come in?" "Mr. DePrimo, this really isn't a good time," I replied, feeling uneasy. "Mr. Jarrett, I've come all the way from New Jersey. My associates and I would appreciate it if you could find the time to let me in. It would be in your best interest," he said firmly. With the two hulking men looming behind him, I couldn't deny their implied threat. Come in, Mr. DePrimo," I relented, opening the door wider and hoping I wouldn't regret it. I shut the door quickly behind him, wary of the Bobbsey twins potentially barging in. If things went south and they tried to force their way in, I feared I'd have a situation on my hands, a home invasion I wasn't prepared to handle, or rebuild my house if I ever got over this. Luckily, as I closed the door, he motioned to his associates, who acknowledged with a nod, halting halfway up the steps. The deadbolt clicked into place, and I faced him. "Please, come in and have a seat in the living room. Can I get you some coffee, tea, soda, or maybe some scotch?" I offered after a brief pause. His serious demeanor cracked into a faint smile. "Scotch sounds perfect, Mr. Jarrett." I poured 2 glasses and handed one to him. "What can I help you with, Mr. DePrimo? Is everything all right with Maria?" He savored the aroma of the Macallan before taking a sip. "She's all right physically, but we're in couples counseling. She's been telling me she's visiting her sister in Ohio or attending conferences for the past 7 or 8 months. Except for a trip to Cleveland in April, I don't think she's been in Ohio or seen her sister Trudy except during Christmas." After another sip, he continued. "Which brings me to why I'm here, Mr. Jarrett. Did you ever sleep with my wife?" He stared into my eyes, seemingly knowing the truth. I remembered Maria's admission about plausible deniability and hoped she hadn't lied to me again. "Mr. DePrimo, Maria was an old and dear friend. I was mistaken about her marital status, but I assure you, I cared for her and would never betray her trust. I held his gaze, hoping he believed my sincerity. For me, my time with Maria was about love, not just physical pleasure. Vince DiPrimo stared at me for what felt like an eternity before finishing his scotch in one gulp and placing the glass down firmly on the coffee table. Good, he said firmly. Now that's settled, there's one more thing. Maria is my wife, and despite our difficulties, I intend to keep it that way. I strongly advise you to stay away from her. If I hear of you two reconnecting or communicating, you won't like the outcome. However, if she goes through with a divorce and takes the financial hit we agreed on, then I won't care what you do with her. But consider if you want to invest your time in someone who has shown herself to be a liar and cheater. If she can cheat on me, her husband of 25 years and the father of her child, just think about what she might do to you. He stood up and added, "Thank you for your time, your attention, and the scotch. Goodbye, Mr. Jarrett. I hope our paths don't cross again for everyone's sake." After he left, I poured another glass of Macallan and locked the deadbolt. My heart raced as I reflected on the situation. Over the past 8 or 9 months, I developed strong feelings for Maria. But she had lied to me, omitting her husband from her life story. I grew to resent her for what she had done to me, to us, and to her husband. Despite her claims of his infidelity, Maria had shown herself to be deceitful and disloyal, just as Mr. DiPrimo had warned. I couldn't be sure if her accusations against him were true or false. Whether he had cheated or not didn't change things. Even if he had, it didn't justify her lying and cheating. More importantly, it didn't give her the right to involve me in her deceitful behavior. I found myself caught in her tangled mess, but it wasn't by my choice. I'd grown to love Maria, but it wasn't the real her. It was the persona she presented. Once I accepted this, I knew what I needed to do. A few days later, an overnight package arrived at my office. Inside was a handwritten letter from Maria atop a stack of bound papers. "Dearest Tom, I deeply regret everything that has transpired. I'm taking steps to make things right so I can move forward and perhaps give our relationship a chance. Enclosed is the first part of the certified divorce petition to prove my sincerity. I never should have lied to you or used you. I'm truly sorry and vow never to deceive you again." She also shared her new address, phone number, and a private email address. Her heartfelt message brought tears to my eyes. After pondering all afternoon, aided by the rest of the bottle of Macallan, I sat down with my laptop that evening. I started typing her new email address but stopped. Despite Vincent DiPrimo's warning, what I needed to convey couldn't be expressed through email or over the phone. I closed the email and opened my favorite travel app. A few days later, I took a chance and sent Maria a message through her new private email, hoping Vincent DiPrimo wouldn't intercept it from my temporary email address that I'd likely never use again. We arranged to meet at a quiet cafe in Newark. When Maria arrived, she rushed over and tried to embrace me, saying, "Oh, Tom, I've missed you so much. I'm relieved you're here. You took so long to respond, I was really worried." I shook my head and gestured for her to sit down. "Maria, hold on, we need to talk." She sensed what was coming and pleaded with me, shaking her head. "Tom, please, don't do this, please." Her plea was painful, like being stabbed again, but I persisted with what needed to be said. "Maria, I loved you then, and I still do. But you played a dangerous game with your husband and with me, using both of us because you couldn't make a decisive choice. You tried to have us both, thinking maybe it was safe because of the distance between us. But I fell for you deeply, and I was willing to do anything, for you to come to me, or even for me to move here. But it all fell apart, as it was bound to when built on deception rather than honesty. I wanted to tell you, Tom, I really did, but it's too late for explanations, Maria. None of it matters now. You're finally getting the divorce you should have sought before getting involved with me. You've lost a man who once loved you, and now you've lost me too, the other guy who cared deeply for you. No, Tom, we can fix this. I promise. I'll do anything to make it work so we can be together. No, Maria, you played a dangerous game and we both ended up losing." She tried to argue again, but I raised my hand to stop her. "No, Maria, it's not my decision anymore. You ensured that from the start. No matter how hard we try now, we can't undo the damage. There's no happy ending for us. I'm sorry, but this is goodbye." Her eyes pleaded with me to reconsider, but they saw my resolve and she slowly nodded in acceptance. "I'm truly sorry, Tom. I wish I had been clearer-headed and made the right choices." I wasn't sure if clarity was her issue, but I agreed with her apology. "Me too, Maria. Take care, and I hope you find happiness." Tears streamed down Maria's cheeks as I walked away, my own heartache hidden inside. Surprisingly, the plane had plenty of empty seats. Mine was near the back, with no one occupying either the window or middle seat to my left. I barely paid attention to the safety instructions. I had flown on the 737 so many times that I could have recited them myself. The flight attendant who came by to check on my seatbelt, stowage of my personal item, tray table position, and seat alignment hardly registered with me. During takeoff, I shut my eyes, attempting to push thoughts of Maria from my mind. Images of her floated around me, reminiscent of the alluring figures in those James Bond opening sequences, tempting me to join her once more. "Excuse me, sir?" the attendant asked a while later as beverage service began. "Can I get you anything?" "Just water, please," I replied, looking up at her. She had blue eyes, a pleasant smile, and a short bob of dark hair, looking every bit the quintessential flight attendant in her uniform. I tried to muster a smile. "Nothing stronger?" "You look like you've lost your best friend," she remarked. "I did. I ended things with her." "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to pry." She handed me the water and moved on, and I returned to my thoughts and frustrations. "Hey again," came a soft whisper. Services paused for a bit. "Want to talk about it? About what happened, since I've already pried and all?" I couldn't help but smile a bit more genuinely this time. "Is the airline offering in-flight psychologists now along with movies?" She chuckled. "No, but you looked so sad. And then what you said hit close to home. I went through something similar a while back when I realized he preferred things the way they were over being with me. 5 years wasted. Do you want to share your story? Or should I leave you be? Thanks for noticing and asking. Not many people do that these days. Lesson 1 in recovering from a breakup. There are still good people out there. Thanks. You know, despite my initial doubts, I'm actually enjoying this extra service. She laughed. Good to hear. So do you want to share a bit about your situation? Maybe I can offer some fresh insights on what happened, give you some bang for your buck if that's okay. Yeah, sure, thanks. My girlfriend and I have been apart for a while now after I caught her lying. She's tried to patch things up, but I just can't trust her enough to make our relationship permanent, especially after a similar situation with my ex. You know what they say, once bitten, twice shy? Yeah, I get it. My ex-husband betrayed my trust. I gave him another chance, and he hurt me even worse by cheating again. I learned my lesson the hard way. I'm sorry to hear that. Thanks, but that was 12 years ago. Somehow, I've been lucky since then. It wasn't planned, but I've managed to avoid him ever since. Too bad we're on a plane. There's no wood for you to knock on. She shrugged. I don't think it would make a difference. I'm older now, and he probably hasn't changed much either. If we ever happen to cross paths again, I'll just keep quiet and walk right past him. Oh, and I'll do the same with Benjamin, my status quo guy. Despite her duties, which didn't take long due to the empty plane, she surprised me by returning. We continued our conversation for most of the flight, which lifted my spirits and brightened my mood. After we landed and the passengers in front started disembarking, I thought about what lay ahead and let out a sigh. Don't be too hard on yourself. It hurts, but it's not the end of the world. You'll be okay. Turning, I saw her standing in the aisle just behind my row of seats. I got up from my window seat and stood upright in front of her, ducking under the overhead bins. Thanks for talking with me. You really made this miserable flight much better. By the way, I'm Tom. She smiled and extended her hand. Nice to meet you, Tom. I'm Cindy, we both said simultaneously, pointing to her name tag. She chuckled and handed me a card. I don't usually give these out, but I have a feeling you could use a friend. If you ever want to talk, my cell number is on there. I took the card and glanced at it. Thanks, Cindy, and thanks, something. I might just do that. We said our goodbyes after we got off the plane and didn't see each other again. As I made my way to the parking lot for my car, I set down my carry-on bag, pulled out my phone, and Cindy's card. I scanned her card into my contacts and then opened a message to her. Hi, Cindy, it's Tom from the plane. This is my cell. It was great talking to you. Hope our paths cross again sometime. I remembered Vincent DePrimo's ominous parting words, but they felt fitting now. It was too early and I was still hurting too much to say more. By sending this message, maybe Cindy would remember me if I ever reached out for real. I slipped my phone back into my pocket and walked out of the terminal into the bright sun. Despite the Texas heat making me sweat immediately, I looked forward to the cool air conditioning inside. Yet before I'd gone 30 feet, my phone buzzed with an incoming text. I checked it and read, Cindy, hi Tom, me too. Her brief reply warmed my heart more than the scorching sun. Maria was out of my life now, but maybe I'd find new love in the future, perhaps with Cindy or someone else. I didn't have to be alone and lonely forever. Almost forgetting about the summer heat and feeling a new sense of optimism, I smiled and looked ahead to what lay ahead. 35 years later, at our reunion with tickets in hand, I headed to the bar. The closest one to our table had a long line, so I walked further around the ballroom to the next one. As I made my way, I reflected on how much everyone had changed since our 25-year reunion. Many had gained weight, lost hair, and showed more signs of aging with extra lines on their faces. Some had gray hair, and a few tried to fight aging with hair dyes, transplants, or plastic surgery, with mixed results. Now in our late 50s, most of us from our graduating class seemed to be in decent shape and enjoying themselves. However, a few individuals looked much older, perhaps due to genetics or a life of hard living, showing how time had affected their appearance and, in many cases, their health. They were hardly recognizable compared to our youthful days together. In fact, aside from a handful of close friends and those I've kept in touch with, most of my classmates were now distant memories, some barely recognizable. Then there was a table in one corner of the ballroom marked with a single battery-operated candle, thanks to the fire marshal. It bore the words "In Memoriam," listing the names of those who had passed away for various reasons over the years. Keith Schilling, always struggling with weight, passed away as expected due to heart issues, leaving behind his wife Gabby and their almost grown children. The deaths that hit hardest were Larry and Nina Kilgrove, who tragically died in a plane crash when their Piper lost power, leaving no safe place to land. Mark, Andy, and I had served as pallbearers at their funeral. Arriving at the next bar, I found only a few people in line ahead of me. I waited, scanning faces to see if I could recognize anyone before resorting to reading their name tags. Not spotting anyone familiar nearby, I turned back to the front as the line moved forward. The man at the bar seemed a bit tipsy, flirting with the young female bartender who looked much younger than my wife, Evelyn, now a mother of two with a third child on the way. With drinks in hand, the man turned towards me, and upon closer inspection, I realized I knew him but couldn't place him until I saw his name tag labeled Guest. "Mr. Jarrett, I wondered if we'd meet here," he said with a smile. "Mr. DePrimo, I'm surprised to see you," I replied. He grinned. "Why not? My wife, though she graduated a semester late, was one of your classmates, remember?" My heart raced at the mention of Maria. When we parted, she was divorcing him. Had something changed to bring them back together? Turning to shout, DePrimo called out, "Maria, get over here. Come see your old flame." No, I hadn't heard from Maria since I walked out of that small restaurant in New Jersey over 9 years ago. But here she was, approaching me. Her smile, always quick to appear, was absent as she came closer. She glanced at Vince DePrimo, who nodded before turning to me. "Hi, Tom. I was hoping I'd find you here." "Hi, Maria. I didn't see your name on the guest list, so I didn't expect you. How have you been?" "Tell you what, you two catch up. I'll be over at our table, watching." DePrimo nodded at me as if asserting his dominance, then exchanged a look with Maria before heading to their table a few spots back from the bar. Glancing over, I noticed he was watching me intently, like he was scrutinizing every move. Maria looked at me and hesitated. "I know what you're thinking. Why?" I nodded. "I wanted to leave him, but when you said goodbye, I had to make a tough decision. It seemed easier to stay and tolerate his indiscretions than to start fresh on my own. He treats me well most—" A hand touched my elbow, interrupting us. "Hey, Tom, I was wondering where you went," said Gabby. "Oh, hi, Maria. I'm Gabby, from our class," she added, noticing Maria looking at her name tag. She slid her hand down my forearm and intertwined her fingers with mine. And Tom's wife, of course. Maria's expression as she glanced at Gabby and then at me was priceless, a mix of surprise and denial. She greeted Gabby briefly and then found a reason to leave. I watched her depart, briefly wondering about what might have been before refocusing on reality. And, I thought, reality was so much better. As Gabby and I ordered our drinks, I reflected on how fortunate I was and all that had transpired. After meeting Cindy on the flight, we dated for a while, proving that there are good people out there, even if they aren't always the right match. This realization helped me move forward in life. When Keith passed away about a year later, I supported a grieving Gabby with some of the arrangements and spoke at Keith's funeral. We remained friends over the years, with me checking in on her occasionally to offer support and listen to her frustrations. However, it wasn't until Larry and Nina's funeral, nearly 3 years later, and after Gabby had processed her grief, that we truly connected and started to build something deeper. unexpectedly hitting it off. We married just over a year later. Returning to our table with friends, Gabby remarked, "Maria doesn't look happy, does she?" "No, I don't think so," I agreed. "She played a deceitful game and lost. Now she's serving her time until one of them passes away or they give up and move on. Since I doubt they'll ever give up, I bet they'll both live into their 90s just out of spite to deny each other the satisfaction. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes," Gabby chuckled, quoting a saying. "Or in this case, wicked games, as you said." Speaking of games, want to take a break for a bit? I've got an idea for a game we can play upstairs that might take your mind off her and everything else. We dropped off Mark and Jane's drinks at the table and told them we were going for a walk, though from their look at each other, I knew they didn't buy it. As we walked away, Gabby leaned in and whispered, "We've given them an idea. They'll be right behind us, 5 minutes tops." Chuckling, I agreed, saying, "Let's pick up the pace so they don't catch us." We retraced our steps from the conference center to the hotel. Barely getting the door to our room closed, Gabby was all over me, showing me how much she loved me, and that dwelling on the past was a waste of time. Our clothes were off in moments, slipping off between kisses and gentle touches, and then we were in bed, eager for each other. Gabby climbed on top of me, pressing close as we moved together. With tender kisses, she brought us even closer, focusing only on us and nothing else in the world. Together, we reached the peak of pleasure, Gabby letting out a wonderful moan, and me a prolonged, satisfied groan, giving our all to each other before she settled gently on me, my arms wrapped around her, holding her close. "I love you, Tom," she whispered, breathless. "I love you too, sweetheart." We lay there catching our breath for a few minutes before I asked about heading back to our class party. Gabby shook her head. "I'd be up for staying right here all night if you want. Instead of heading back down to the party, we'll see everyone in our group at breakfast tomorrow anyway." I think you're onto something," I replied, thinking about Vincent DePrimo. "Yeah, we've probably bumped into enough people for one day. The only person I'm interested in seeing again tonight is you. So, if you're ready, let's work on uncrossing these." Gabby giggled, and we both smiled. Honestly, I'm not sure who had the bigger smile, but at that moment, I decided I was willing to stay up all night if necessary to find out.